everybody, Chris the old ass retro gamer here, back with another film collection live stream. Today, I'm going to be talking about all of the Blu-rays, 4K UHDs, and 3D Blu-rays in my collection that are between the letters H and K. Yeah! Here from the beginning? Oh, yeah! Yes, last week I talked about, what was it, E through G, and I didn't think that would take very long because, you know, I don't have a lot of movies within those letters of the alphabet, and it ended up being like a 2.5 hour stream. So, I was like, do I really want to talk about 3 letters again, or should I just narrow it down to 2? But it's just gonna be a long stream. Just bear with me. Yeah. So, like I always do, I want to talk about some of the movies first that I've added to my collection since the last stream that fall into the letters of the alphabet that I've already covered, or one of the categories of my collection that I've already covered, like the TV shows, the DVDs, or the box sets. So, I hit up a half-price books the other day. I had a doctor's appointment. I told you game night was... Oh, he died! I told you game night was awesome. So I had a doctor's appointment, and I had about an hour of time to waste between my appointment and getting out of work, so I just went over to the half-price books to kill some time, and they are like running dangerously low on product because they are barely purchasing anything from anybody right now. And if they do, it's just like old people that have been doing spring cleaning, we're talking retirees doing like spring cleaning during the whole COVID shutdown thing, and they're just bringing all their old books, which are probably just getting thrown away. So no movies, no new movies, no new games, no nothing. It was just like bare bones. I told you Dr. Sleep was awesome too. Yeah! I'm glad you enjoyed him. So I found some movies that I think I might have skipped over the last time I was there. You're going to see some of them in later streams. They're later in the alphabet. But I did pick up a 2-pack of the original 2 Crocodile Dundee movies. I have not watched these movies since probably the late 80s. I remember my parents took me to see the original Crocodile Dundee in the theater, my brother and I remember really liking it, and I might have seen it one more time on home video, and I think that was it. I rarely watched the first one. Never saw the second one in the theater, but when it was on cable, I watched it like every single time it was on. Good day, mate. So I watched part 2 way more than the first one. I don't really remember much about the first one, other than the fact that I remember liking it. I just remember it was like a reporter goes to Australia to do a story about like a crocodile poacher or something, and she ends up bringing, the Crocodile Dundee guy, the poacher, to New York, and they fall in love, and yeah. That's pretty much all I remember. The second one is more of like an adventure action movie where Dundee and his girlfriend get involved with drug runners, and they end up having to go back to the outback to hide out. The drug runners follow them, and it's like this big cat and mouse game out in the tundra. So, what was the first one you think I popped in when I brought this home the other day? It's part 2. I'll probably watch the first one this weekend sometime. I'm off tomorrow, and I have the next 2 days off, obviously, because weekend. So, yeah, I'm going to go back and rewatch the first one, see if it still holds up. But the second one still, I thought, was pretty entertaining. I think it's going to rely more on watching the first one again, because I'm like, there's talking about things that I think they're referencing from the first film. So, also, in my DVD stream, the first one that I did, I was talking about how the DVDs that are in my collection, the ones I still have, are the ones that I will not get rid of until like a Blu-ray edition or a 4K version of it comes out, because I like the movie that much. I do not want to get rid of it. I still want to own a copy until I can get a better looking one down the line. Well, I'd also mentioned that I had seen a Blu-ray copy of this one specific movie on eBay, and I thought it was like some non-legit version. It looked like someone had made like illegal copies and was trying to sell them on eBay type of thing. It didn't look legit. So I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. So I recently discovered this channel called Good Bad Flicks on YouTube. And the guy does like retrospectives and like examining movies that are considered bad but he thinks are still good. And he did one about this movie, and he brought up that exact edition of the Blu-ray that I had been seeing on eBay that I thought was fake. And he said, nope, you can only get this through the company's specific website. They never put it out for sale in stores. You can only get it off this one website. It's like a club. And I was like, oh shit. So I went out and bought a copy of The Black Hole. Disney never put this out for sale in stores. You could only get it through the Disney Movie Club? Yeah, the Disney Movie Club. A special presentation of the Disney Movie Club. And I do believe this is the version that they're currently streaming on Disney Plus, because there is an HD version of it there that I've watched probably twice since I got Disney Plus. So, yeah, I popped this in last night to take a look, and it looks and sounds fantastic. The only problem is there are absolutely zero extras on here, but whatever. There's maybe 2 extras on the DVD, and it was just them talking about what the ending was supposed to be like and how they couldn't afford it. But if you haven't seen The Black Hole, I highly recommend it. Yes, it was designed to be like to ride on the coattails of Star Wars, but it's not a space adventure movie. It is a gothic haunted house horror movie in outer space. You heard it here. Disney was trying new things. And I love it. I saw it in the theater back when it first was released. My parents took my brother and I to see it. Scarred the both of us for life. There is some shit in here that is not suitable for kids at all. There's like 3 things in this movie that scared the ever-loving crap out of me. But I loved it, and I still do. I still think it holds up very well. Even the ending, which is very strange and esoteric, but I still think it's great. So I'm all about that. And then the big thing was I had ordered this before I even did the first movie collection live stream. I ordered from Amazon, and it got lost in the mail. Whoever was delivering it either lost it somewhere, it got stolen out of the truck, or they took it. So I put in for a replacement, and it took like another week and a half before they even shipped the damn thing after I asked for it, and it finally showed up yesterday. And that is the Fly collection. This is from Scream Factory. They put this out maybe a year ago, and it has every movie in the Fly franchise. We're talking the original Fly, Return of the Fly, Curse of the Fly, and the Jeff Goldblum 1986 remake, and the sequel to that with Eric Stoltz. I mostly bought it for the 2 newer ones, the remake and the sequel to the remake. But the original Fly is still pretty cool. I've never seen the sequels to the original Fly. I've never seen Return of the Fly or Curse of the Fly, so I need to check those out. But they do have a lot of extras on them. There's some new extras on the remake of the Fly and the Fly 2 that are exclusive to this box set, which is pretty neat. But the Jeff Goldblum Fly is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I actually talked about it in one of my Top 3 Tuesday videos where I was actually talking about films. That was the one about, I think it was Halloween video that I did. It was all about horror movies, and The Fly was on the list. It's one of my favorites, and we actually watched that for the movie starting podcast this past season with Joel Valley of Media Glitch, and that was a great episode. So really happy to add this to the collection. It took long enough to get here, so let's just go right into the movies. So H through K. Let's hope this doesn't take 2.5 hours. Starting off with, I know Charlie knows this one. We're talking Hackers. Hi, boom, boom. Hi. I can't do the serial killer stuff. I don't. My voice, my balls have actually dropped. Other than we all know that Matthew Lillard still haven't. Anyway, drink. So, Hack the Planet. This came out through Shout Factory, which is the non-horror wing of Scream Factory, and has a bunch of extras on here. It is a lot of stuff just about hacking in general and how they did all this research to make the movie as authentic as they possibly could. But then again, you look at the screens in the movie when they're actually hacking, you're like, computers don't do that. But there's a lot of stuff in here with some of the stars. They don't actually get to interview Angelina Jolie or Johnny Lee Miller or anything like that, but there are interviews with Fisher Stevens and Matthew Lillard and Penn Jillette, and as well as like Ian Softly, the director. But if you've never seen Hackers, came out like right after the original Mortal Kombat movie. And I remember wanting to see it. I thought the trailers looked pretty cool. Mortal Kombat, the movie, dominated my life that summer. The moment it came out, I saw it like every week until it was gone from the theaters. So I never ended up getting this chance to see this. I think it was my boss at the video store I worked at gave me a screener of this to watch. And I don't remember if I was the version that I brought over to your house, Charlie, and we watched, or if I actually like rented it or copied it or whatever and we watched it there. But it became like an instant classic in my house. In my collection at the video store I worked at. I played this as much as we possibly could. My boss only bought like 2 copies of this to show or to have for rent in the store, and like it didn't really rent at first, but every time I would play it and the freaking 90s techno music would start, someone would always ask if they could rent it. So I pushed this movie a lot, Has a fantastic like 90s techno soundtrack. It's one of Angelina Jolie's first movies, and of course she shows off the boobs in it. It's the first time I saw Johnny Lee Miller. I went to see Trainspotting because Johnny Lee Miller was in that, and I was like, oh look, it's Dade from Hackers. I should probably go see that because I think he's a pretty decent actor. Fisher Stevens and Lorraine Bracco. Well, Fisher Stevens is fun to watch. Lorraine Bracco is really out of place in this movie. But it is really fun. It's like a caper movie with a bunch of hackers. It's pretty awesome. Actually, put it like that. Next up, I have the unrated version of The Hangover, the only movie in this series that I actually enjoyed. I remember I went and saw this with a couple of friends in the theater, like opening night, and the entire theater just was constantly laughing, like even well past when the joke was over. And then I remember I saw The Hangover 2 opening day, and nobody laughed at any of the jokes, and it was like you could hear crickets in there. It was like a summer evening in the country. Yeah, it's just about a bunch of friends who have like a crazy night in Vegas and end up getting like drunk and forget everything that happened. They have to like piece back together all the crazy crap that they did that night. It's pretty funny. It's not as funny like when you watch it on repeat viewings. Like the first time you watch it is definitely going to be the best time you ever have watching it, but it is still enjoyable enough that I wanted to keep it in my collection. Naked Ken John. I do not need to see his butt running through the desert. Hello, gay boys. You know, that shit. This just got turned into a TV show on Amazon Prime, and I have yet to watch it. But we're talking Hannah. I saw this when I was unemployed back in 2011. I played in the theater, and I was like, I need to entertain myself instead of being depressed all the time. So I went and saw this. It's based on a comic book or a graphic novel or whatever, and it's basically about a young girl who has been raised out in like the middle of nowhere by her father, who's like an ex-assassin, and he has trained her to be an assassin as well because he knows that at some point during their lives, the people that he's hiding from are going to find them. And it's crazy. Saoirse Ronan is the titular character, and she is pretty good at fight scenes. But the thing that gets me about this is it's like a comic booky action movie, but it has like the sensibilities of an indie film. It's kind of strange, but I really like it. Cate Blanchett is great as like the crazy person who's hunting them, but it's really fun. I like it a lot. Yeah, Hannah's great. I picked this up at Half Price Books. It was dirt cheap. It was like $3. I saw this in the theater with my ex, and we were both like, eh? And we saw it in 3D in the theater, and I was like, wow, you know you're in trouble when the best looking thing in 3D in the movie is the end credits. But I picked it up because, like I said, it was $3, and I was trying to get as many of these 3D Blu-rays as I can. I'm talking Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters 3D. Saw it in the theater. It's got some cool stuff in it. There's really cool ideas and some really cool weapons that are designed for the movie. I like the idea that because of Hansel and Gretel being taken by the witch, you know, in the story, and they were fed all that candy, that Hansel is now like severely diabetic because of it, and he is constantly having to take medication, and it becomes like a plot point later on that he can't get it. And I thought that was kind of neat. Famke Janssen plays the villain in the movie, and she just looks like she is bored as shit. And she actually said later on she took the role because she wanted to pay off her house. But yeah, like I said, there's some cool weapons, some cool action scenes. Some of the designs of some of the witches they end up hunting at the end. There's like this big witch orgy action scene. And some of the designs of the witches are pretty cool, and the action's kind of neat. But outside of that, it's just kind of like okay, as far as I'm concerned. It could have been better. The guy who directed that directed, Dead Snow? And I thought that was the reason why I wanted to see Hansel and Gretel was because Dead Snow was so great. And then I was just kind of like, I think he can do better. But he also directed What Happened to Monday, or What Happened to Wednesday, or was it Monday? What Happened to Monday on Netflix. And that's a fantastic flick. Here, okay, we're going to talk about it, guys. This is the movie that made me want to be a filmmaker. So a friend of my parents... they knew him through, well, they were friends through church. They had a kid who was maybe a year younger than me, maybe 2 years younger than me, and I guess he didn't really have any friends at all. And so my mom was trying to, like, his parents were like, we need to get him some friends. So my mom's like, well, he seems to have the same interests as Chris. Let's hook him and Chris up and they can, like, hang out. So, like, I remember out of nowhere in, like, it was their freshman or sophomore year of high school, like, every Friday night, this guy Sean, his grandpa would pick me up. We'd go pick up Sean, and then we like go out for the night, and like we'd go to like the mall. We get like dinner, and we go to a movie. His grandpa would take us out to a movie, and it was just something we did for. I think we did it for like 2 months, and I saw a lot of really weird movies. And one of the ones we were able to convince his grandfather to take us to see was Hardware. Yeah, not a movie you want to take like an 80-year-old man to go and see, because the whole time the movie was playing, he was like, "Oh my!" Like, "Oh my!" So it's a post-apocalyptic film about a couple. The male in the relationship is like an ex-soldier who has bought a bunch of like robot parts from a dealer to give to his girlfriend, who is like she makes like metal art, and he figured all these robot parts would be good for her artwork. And the thing is, it's like this population control android that was being experimented on in the desert where the parts were found, and it's still kind of alive, and it has the ability to assemble itself out of junk. So it turns into Alien, except instead of an alien loose in the apartment, it's this killer robot. And it has some of the nastiest freaking kills you will ever see in a movie. I mean, it is just brutal. It has a great soundtrack, like Ministry. They play Stigmata by Ministry at one point. But like the thing about it that got me was it was mostly just a lot of visual storytelling, and I hadn't really seen a lot of stuff like that back then. So like the way the movie is shot is fantastic for like an art house type movie, a real low budget art house type movie. I like the characters, I like the music, everything just kind of came together, and for me it was just like I basically, like, when the movie was over, I was like, I need to do this, and it just like broke my brain. And it became one of my all-time favorite movies. And the moment I found out that it was coming out on Blu-ray through, was it Severin? I think, yeah, Severin, which is like an indie media company, that they were only selling this through the internet. I was like, I jumped on it. It was actually streaming on Netflix a little while ago, too. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. I think it's fantastic. I think it still holds up. And the director of this just finally came out of like almost 20-some-odd year retirement to make Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage, which I talked about a couple of streams ago and was actually pretty good. So if you haven't seen Hardware, I highly recommend checking it out. If you like monster movies like Alien and stuff, it's good. And here I still need to get the third film in this franchise, but we got the Harold and Kumar movies. Like Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle and Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay. Charlie and I think, was it Charlie that I went and saw this with? No, I went to see this with my friend Bill. And I think Charlie ended up going to the same screening that we were at. And, yeah, I remember really, really liking this. This one is actually really funny. I don't remember Guantanamo Bay all that much. I remember I saw this with an actress friend of mine and a couple of her friends. And I remember laughing during the movie, but I never really had the urge to rewatch it. But I got these two in a lot, which is why I own it. But I haven't picked up the third one yet, the 3D one. That's like Harold and Kumar Christmas or whatever. I thought that one was just okay. I thought I actually had more movies in this franchise, but I guess I don't. Really? Oh, because 4K. So I got burnt out on this franchise. Once it like ran its course and all the movies came out for it, I kind of went like, yeah. I had actually bought like those big, huge collector's editions of each individual movie that were like $60 each. And after a while, I was just like, do I really need those in my collection? Do I really want to have this shit taking up space and I'm barely ever going to watch it? Because at that point, I was just kind of like, I don't think I ever really need to watch these that much anymore. And I'm talking Harry Potter. And out of all the movies that have been released, the only one I currently own is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 in 3D. Because 3D. Found this at Half Price Books. I forgot that the third movie was in 3D. I think out of the 2 times I saw this in the theater, I saw it the second time in 3D. And I remember being pretty good, which is why I picked it up. I was like, okay, cool. I need to get all the other movies, just like the standard 4K versions of this on 4K. And why does Hermione look like an old man? That is a horrible, horrible picture of Hermione. That doesn't even look like the actress, does it? Holy crap. Anyway, this was a pretty cool movie. It's a really good end to the series. I like the way they capped it off. I read all the books and all that, but yeah. And I don't think I have I don't have the third one in this series either. We're talking Hatchet, series of horror movies, like old school American horror. It's like going back to the days of the Friday the 13th movies, the original ones from the 80s. It's just like an old throwback slasher film. where what's the dude's name? Victor Crowley. It's like a bayou legend of like this deformed child who will kill you if you go onto his territory or whatever. It turns out to be true. A bunch of people are taking a swamp tour, and they end up coming across Crowley, and he slaughters them all in various ways. And I remember I saw the original in the theater, and I do believe when it was released in the theater it was rated R. But now there's on video we got this unrated director's cut, which adds a little bit more gore in. There's like one awesome kill where like Rob Riggle or whatever, he gets grabbed by his jaw, his upper jaw and his lower jaw, and the killer just stretches his mouth until his head comes apart. And I remember going like, that was cool, because there's a really clever cut in there to go from the actual actor's head to the fake head that's being ripped open. It was pretty fun, and it ends like on this like cliffhanger zinger moment, and I was just kind of like, the 80s movies did that kind of too, so whatever. Friday the 13th with Jason coming out of the lake and all that. And then, like, a couple of years later, we got Hatchet 2, which picks up exactly where that first film left off on that cliffhanger and continues on. The only thing is the actress who was the final girl in the first movie was not available for the second movie, so they hired, what's her name? Danielle Harris, who played Jamie in Halloween 4 and 5. So now she's an adult. She did come back for the third one also. And this one, the director refused to edit the movie. So it was released unrated, which is like unheard of. So only like 2 theaters in Chicago carried it. And one of them was called, I think it was Piper Alley. And it was like in this really bad neighborhood. But a couple of friends and I got together and we went and saw it in the theater. And we were just kind of like, enjoy. Because I think they were able to play it for like 1 week. And then there were like protests or something. Or people were like boycotting it. And it got pulled. So we were like one of the only... Like, I think only the people that saw it that week in the theater were the only people who ever ended up seeing it in the theater, which is kind of strange. But it's a fun slasher movie also. Continuation of the first one, just as gory. The third one is the one that I'm not too big on, because the original director of the first 2 didn't return for that one. So it just felt weird. So I never picked it up. But I have seen it, and I was just kind of like, eh. The Hateful Eight. I do believe this is not the cut that I saw. So I only saw this the one time in the theater. This is the last Quentin Tarantino movie that he made, I do believe. No. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was. This is the one before that. Yeah, the 8th film. He's only going to make 10 before he retires. Sure, I'll believe that when I see it. Anyway, I was visiting my brother for the holidays in LA, and there was like an exclusive engagement to see like this uncut version of this movie on film and not digitally. And we all went to see it. I actually have like this big booklet that they gave everybody in line. It's like something that you would get like in the 50s or something, like lobby cards and all that. They give you like this like collectible booklet, which is kind of neat. And like I like it, but at the same time, I think it is kind of slow and kind of mean for the sake of being mean. I do like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a little bit more. Django Unchained is way better than this too. But I enjoy just basically for the performances. Like Kurt Russell looks like he's having a ball, and so does Jennifer Jason Leigh, even though like she just gets the ever-loving snot beaten out of her over the course of the movie. But it's cool. It's just I think it could have been a lot better. I think it did need to be cut down. The version that I saw was like it had an overture. It was so long. It had an intermission. It was just bizarre. I think it was like 3.5 hours long. How long is this one? 168 minutes. Jesus. I need to watch it again. I picked it up at Half Price Books for like $5, so there's that. Next up is Heat. So this was a movie that took some warming up by me to get to the point where I could enjoy it. Saw it in the theater. I'm a big fan of Michael Mann, the director. He did the original version of Red Dragon in film. It was Manhunter. He did a movie called Thief. He did The Keep. Miami Vice was his thing. He created that. And this was like the big movie where you were finally going to get Al Pacino and Robert De Niro together on screen instead of like in different parts of the movie, never coming face to face. They were going to actually have a Heat warming up. I know, right? I got the skills. Anyway, I saw this in the theater. It is really long. It's like 3 hours long. And for some reason, I thought it was just going to be like this nonstop action movie. I'm like, well, then again, it's got like 2 50-year-olds in it, so I don't think it could be that much action in it. But there is an awesome bank robbery scene in here that is fantastically shot. And like I really didn't dig it when it first came out. When I first saw it, I was just kind of like, it was all right. But my brother, who I saw with, was just kind of like, you're stupid. You're so crazy. How could you not like it? I was just kind of like, I was expecting something else. But when it came out on video, I watched it again, and I was like, okay, I get it. So, yeah, it's a great movie. It's way better than Righteous Kill, the other movie where these two teamed up. Do not watch that movie. It is terrible. I still haven't seen the one that's on Netflix with the two of them, where they de-age them with computers. But Heat is a fantastic, like, crime thriller action movie. Here's a classic, Heathers, the 20th High School Reunion Edition. Yeah, this is like a black comedy that I randomly caught on cable one night. Never rented it or anything like that, but Winona Ryder, Christian Slater, a really, really young Shannon Doherty. Yeah, basically it's like the popular kids versus the outcasts, and Winona Ryder realizes that she's hanging out with the popular kids who are assholes, and she hates them, and her and her boyfriend come up with like a plan to kill them, thinking that it's a joke, and they end up killing people. It's actually really funny and clever. It's a real nice satire on like high school life. It's pretty cool. Here's a good one. Heavy Metal, the movie I saw in the drive-in in 1980 and probably shouldn't have seen. Because my parents were under the assumption, I don't think they heard of the comic book, or they didn't know what it was. Like maybe they heard of it and didn't know what the content of the comic book was. And yeah, they figured cartoon, it's going to be great for the kids. How did they not know that this was rated R? I don't know. But anyway, took us to the drive. My brother and I don't even know if my brother was born at that point yet. Might have just been me. I just remember seeing it in the drive-in. Yeah, my parents took me to see this in the drive-in, and they were like, oh, we made a mistake. Because, like, the first thing that happens is, like, you see a guy melt, and then there's, like, the first story that they go into, because it's basically like an anthology movie of stories involving this, like, magical orb. And it's, like, telling stories of the planets it's been on and the things it's seen. And, like, the first story takes place in New York or whatever, and there's, like, a cabbie who like picks up this chick with a giant chest, and they bang a couple of times, and it happens randomly on and off, like just women just dropping their clothes off and stuff like that. So it's like part science fiction movie, part comedy, part action movie, part horror movie, because there's one story that's all about zombies. But the animation is great throughout. I think it was Nelvana did the animation for this, but a lot of it's been like rotoscoped, like Ralph Bakshi style, the guy who did Lord of the Rings. And it looks fantastic, and it's got a great rock soundtrack, like 70s, 80s rock soundtrack, like Blue Oyster Cult, the Dio version of Black Sabbath. I love that song. I don't care. But it's great. I still think it holds up, and it has a lot of great voice, or it has a great voice cast, too. A lot of people from, like, SCTV. Like, John Candy's in it, Eugene Levy, Harold Ramis. It's awesome. Still think it holds up. I still need to find a copy of the sequel, what is it, Heavy Metal 2000 or Fact 2. It's not nearly as good. Like, not even nearly as good. Good night, boy, man. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we used to say that all the time. It's not even close to being as good as that, but I still want to have it just for, collection's sake. Here I have the original Hellboy and the sequel, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, the ones with Ron Perlman. This is the director's cut of Hellboy because I guess it was shot with the intention of being rated R, and then the studio demanded it needs to be PG-13. So they edited it a little bit and made it PG-13. Didn't really ruin the movie, but you could tell that there was some stuff missing. And I want to say it's maybe a couple of minutes difference. Maybe. But it's a pretty decent like origin story. I remember I read all the comics, and in anticipation of this movie coming out, I read all the comics. And I liked it. I thought that it was just a little too slow. And I was hoping that they would dial down some of the comedy from the comic books, but they kind of left it in and actually put a little bit more in than I thought was good. But it's still a pretty awesome movie, and I was like, if they ever make a sequel, they've got it all set up. You can just get right into the meat of it, and that's exactly what happened with Part 2. Golden Army is way better than the first one as far as I'm concerned. I saw this twice in the theater. I thought it was super creative. It has that awesome outdoor marketplace scene with all those crazy creatures and all that. Is just so well realized. The acting in this one is fantastic. The guy who plays the villain played the villain in Blade 2 also. And the guy is just like a great makeup actor. Like when he's covered head to toe in makeup, he is fantastic. He's a great martial artist too. But I also got Doug Jones in here, who's on Discovery right now, who's great. Who's another awesome makeup actor. He's like a regular for Guillermo del Toro. Fantastic. And it ends on a cliffhanger. They leave a bunch of threads hanging because there was the intention of making a third movie. I'm wearing the Krull shirt, Freak of Four, because I'm going to be talking about this one a little bit later tonight. Yeah, and that never happened. For some reason, it just never came to be. And we got the remake. I don't hate the remake. I don't think it's nearly as good as, the original or this, but I really do wish we got the third film. But I don't hate the remake for not being part 3, like seems like a lot of people do. Saw this in the theater on a whim because I was just kind of like, I want to see something scary. And it's scary in a different way. Like, it's disturbing. We're talking Hereditary. I got the 4K of this. Saw this in the theater, I want to say like a week or two after it opened, and it's from this new director at the time, or was it Ari Aster? I think his name is. Yeah, Ari Aster. And this like basically cemented him as like a new voice in horror. It's a family drama that ends up going to really, really gross, dark places. And it really like got under my skin. It's not for everybody. I completely understand. Midsommar, the follow-up to this, it's not a sequel. It's just, the guy's next movie is exactly the same. It's like you're either going to love it or you hate it. A lot of people I remember saying both of these movies are just boring as shit. I was fascinated because I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen next. It was just really unpredictable. It just had this really creepy vibe to it. It was like this dread everywhere. And then when the ending came, I was just like, that's what's been going on? Jesus, what? And it's just, I think it's fantastic. It has some disgusting stuff going on in it too. The scene in the car when the girl leans out the window, like my jaw dropped in the theater, and I was just like, what just happened? It's a great movie. I still need to get a copy of Midsommar, but I'm glad that I held off buying it because actually I think it was yesterday, whatever company released it, I think it might have been Warner Brothers, said that they're going to release the director's cut on video next month sometime. So I'm glad that I held off because actually Midsommar had a director's cut released in the theaters like after the original version had completed its run. They re-released it in theaters for like a week or two as the director's cut, and I wanted to go see it so I could see it a second time, even though it has a lot of broken bone stuff in there, and that's the shit I can't handle. But I just never got around to it, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that. There's an awesome Jet Li movie, Hero. I actually had a Hong Kong DVD of this, like the uncut Hong Kong version, but I went to see it in the theater, and yeah, the Weinsteins kind of edited a little bit of this out, and it really pisses me off that Harvey Scissorfingers can't freaking keep his fat-ass mitts off movies that he brings in from other countries. Just leave them alone. Give them a redubbing if you must. Don't cut anything out, you dumbass. But the movie is still fantastic. It's kind of like Rashomon, where you keep hearing different versions of a story from different people. So certain fights turn out differently in different people's versions of the story, which I remember being pretty cool. But I really like it. It's a very arty kung fu, like martial arts, what do they call it? Wushu type of film. It's great. Saw that in the theater, I do believe, with Charlie here. Here is a diamond in the rough, if there ever was one. I think Charlie might have seen this one. I think I turned him onto it at one point when I was a kid. But when I found out that this was available on Blu-ray, you have no idea how fast I pre-ordered that thing. I'm talking The Hidden. If you have never seen The Hidden, you are missing out. So the guy who directed Nightmare on Elm Street 2 directed this. It was the follow-up to Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And it's basically a sci-fi crime movie. So there's been this rash of regular old ordinary people suddenly turning violent, stealing expensive cars, robbing banks, just going on the street and just like killing people randomly. And the cops can't figure out why. You are missing out. It is fantastic. And it turns out to be an alien influence of sorts. And I will not ruin it because the scene where things are revealed is really shocking. It has Kyle MacLachlan in it from Dune and Twin Peaks. Claudia Christian, who was on Babylon 5, is in here. She plays a stripper. And it's just a very creative twist on like a buddy cop movie. And it's really well made. It's really well shot. It can be cheap at times because it did have pretty low budget. It was New Line. They still weren't making Lord of the Rings style huge budget movies back then. So this came out like in 86, I want to say. And I remember seeing commercials for it on TV, and it came and went out of theaters like you would not believe how fast because it bombed. But when it came out on home video, my dad rented it, and it was one of those movies where he didn't think me and my brother should be watching it because it was rated R and it might have horror stuff in it. But he watched it, and he was like, the kids can handle it. So we watched it, and my brother and I are both like, okay, that was cool. And it instantly became a favorite of mine and my brother's. And I think it still holds up. It's really, like I said, really, really creative twist on a buddy cop movie. Do not watch the sequel because half the movie is the last half of that movie. It is horrible. I don't have any of the sequels to this. I should probably find the fourth one if I can, because that's the only one I can say I actually like. But we're talking Highlander. This is the director's cut, which is definitely the better version of the movie. Highlander is another one of the movies from my childhood that I used to watch on cable pretty much every single time it was on. Awesome movie. It sounds weird when you describe it to people because I remember my friend Justin had never seen any of the movies, and my friends and I were going to go and see the fourth movie in the theater, but he had never seen any of the previous films. So we were trying to describe what the movies were about to him. Like, yeah, it's about these immortals that can only die when you cut their head off. And he goes, well, if they can get their head cut off, why are they immortal? They're not immortal. They just can't die unless they get their head cut off. I'm like, it's the rules of the movie. They call themselves immortals. The only way you can kill an immortal is if you cut their head. I'm like, just shut up and watch the movie. They are doing a reboot. I know. I'm not looking forward to that. But it was the movie that introduced me to Christophe Lambert. Sean Connery is fantastic in like his little supporting role that he has here. Clancy Brown just freaking owns this movie as Kurgan, the villain. He's like you could tell he's having the time of his life. But it's a really cool, like, fantasy adventure type movie. I still think it holds up. And the music is all done by Queen. It's awesome. Yeah. And then it spawned sequel after sequel, and each one, well, I don't think they get any worse than, well, yeah, they do. The second movie, all of a sudden the immortals are from another planet. And then they've recut that movie at least 3 different times to change it. And who knows where they're from now. I haven't watched any of the other versions since probably the 90s. So I think there's another version after the one that I saw, the Renegade version or whatever, where they're from the past and they were sent to the future. The third movie isn't much better. The fourth movie I like. It's a crossover between the movie series and the TV series. That was a Highlander the series, not the Raven. Forget the Raven. And then there's Highlander the Source, which is probably one of the worst movies ever made. So it is actually better, or is actually worse than Highlander 2. But I highly recommend this. Highlander, the director's cut actually like explains characters why they're together more. Like why that older woman is hanging around Connor the whole time. He rescued her when she was a child from the Nazis in World War II. And it's like, oh, now you know why she hangs out with him all the time. Okay, that makes sense now. He raised her like his daughter. It's pretty cool. That was not in the theatrical cut. It's awesome. Here's a cool one. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I tried watching the BBC version of this a lot. I remember wanting to like it, and I just could never get into it. It was possibly too British for me. At least back then. I should try to watch it now after I've, fallen for like Red Dwarf and stuff like that. Monty Python's like one of the coolest things ever. There's 5 Highlander movies. There's 5 of them. You got the original, you got the Quickening, you got the the Final Dimension. You've got Endgame, and then you've got The Source. And The Source is like Sci-Fi Channel garbage. Like the bottom of the barrel. But the Hollywood version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy introduced a couple of American actors into it. And I thought it was pretty entertaining. It was the friends that I saw this with in the theater, one of them had read the book. And she described it to me as, like, the best way I can describe it is convoluted. And I was like, okay. And when we saw the movie, she's like, they basically condensed it as best they could and tried to make it make sense. And she said it made sense enough for the movie. So it's a very funny, like, sci-fi comedy about a guy who finds out his best friend is an alien and is warning him that aliens are coming to destroy the Earth and he needs to come with them. And they end up hitchhiking on an alien spacecraft as the Earth is destroyed. And it's about them trying to rebuild Earth. And it's very funny. It is very British at times, but it's clever and witty, and I really do like Alan Rickman as the depressed android that you see on the cover here. The stuff that comes out of his mouth is almost as good as the stuff that comes out of his mouth in Galaxy Quest. I thought it was pretty fun. Saw this with Charlie in the theater. Also, we're talking Hot Fuzz. This is the second movie by Edgar Wright, the guy who did Shaun of the Dead. No, I don't got no Ice Pirates, man. I'll just tell you right now. Ain't no Ice Pirates in this collection, man. Nope. Nope. But another collaboration with Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Except this time it's not a zombie movie. This time it's making fun of action movies from like the 90s. And I do remember this being pretty fun. I haven't watched it in quite a while. It's got to at least been 10 years since the last time I watched it. But I remember enjoying it quite a bit. It's awesome. There's a twofer. We watched both of these on the podcast, the movie starting podcast, with the same guest. Church the Game Grinder showed up, I think it was in the first season we watched the first movie, and then this past season, season 3, he wanted to watch the second. So I'm talking House and House 2, the second story. There's actually like a box set that has all 4 House movies in it, but I don't give a shit about 3 and 4. They are garbage. I only want the first 2. The second one is probably the first horror movie I ever saw in a theater. By myself, actually. I've seen horror movies in the theater. I did see The Gate in the theater because my parents thought PG-13, the kids can handle it. No, it scared the shit out of me. House 2 was the first one I was allowed to go see by myself without like having a parent with me. So, House 1 is like a horror comedy by the guy who directed Friday the 13th 2 and 3, Steve Miner. And it's about a guy who moves into his grandmother's house after she commits suicide in the house. She hangs herself. And his son disappeared in that house, and they think that he's dead. He's like his little son. He's like 6 or 7 years old. So he moves into the house, and it's him trying to find out what the hell is going on because he's a novelist. He's trying to write a new book, and weird things start happening. Turns out the house is like a way to go into different like alternate dimensions and stuff, and it's hard to explain. There's like a monster in his closet that he thinks is a raccoon, and it's just this gigantic like beast that beats him up and scratches the shit out of him. And there's a lot of stuff about his Vietnam past, and like one of his Vietnam buddies is actually trying to get revenge on him for leaving him for dead when they're in Vietnam. It's really fun. It's really funny. George Wendt from Cheers is in it, and he's awesome. He's really, really funny in it. And then we got the sequel, which is like the PG-13 version of that. And it's a different house, different characters. It's not connected in any way other than the title. But this one is kind of like a horror, like more of a comedy. It's like a horror comedy adventure. And it's just really, it's stupid, but I find it to be really fun and rewatchable. It's got like a Western thing going on. There's like a crystal skull that has been in this dude Jesse's family for like generations. And it has magical properties. It can open portals. And he finds his undead great-great-grandfather in a grave out in front who's been keeping the skull with him. The skull's keeping him alive. And when they put it on the mantelpiece in the house, it opens up all these different portals to different area or different dimensions and different parts or different time periods in the house. Like there's a prehistoric area. There's like a Aztec sacrificial chamber like in the basement. And then there's like the whole Western thing then that goes on toward the end. And another Cheers alum shows up in this one, John Ratzenberger, and he plays an electrician who has like one of the best characters in these movies. Like he is just so much fun to watch. I highly recommend both of them. The third one isn't even called House 3 in America. It's called The Horror Show, and it's horrible. And then there's the fourth movie, which brings back William Katt from the first movie, but they kill him off in the beginning, and it's like, what the hell's the point? It's just dumb. I do believe Shout Factory is going to be re-releasing like a special edition of this, but I have the remake of House of Wax. This is the movie where Paris Hilton gets killed in the most gruesome way possible, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to see it, because she's... no. I've never actually seen the original, so I had nothing to compare it to. So when I watched it, I was like, that was kind of a cool horror movie. I liked the way they did the whole final girl stuff in this. The bad guy does certain things to her that like impairs her ability to be able to be a final girl, and I thought it was kind of neat the way they did that. And the kills are kind of gruesome and all that, and the whole idea of everybody in this town is like a wax statue, like all the people in this town are a wax statue. Some of it's kind of gross, but watching Paris Hilton get a pipe thrown through her head and then pushed all the way through her skull is kind of awesome. It's fun. It could have been better, but it's fun. And that was actually part of the remakes, the Dark Castle remakes. Not Frank Castle. What's his name? The director from the 50s or whatever, they made all these horror movies for Hammer. I keep on wanting to say Nick Castle, but that's not him. That's the guy who played the Michael Myers in the original Halloween. And Frank Castle is the Punisher. I can't remember what his name is, but his last name is Castle. He directed like all these Hammer horror movies, and then for a long time, Warner Brothers was remaking each of them in the modern day, like in the 90s and the early 2000s, or the late 90s, early 2000s. The first one they did was House on Haunted Hill. And I saw this in the theater twice because I was just fascinated with the way the movie looked, the way it was made, the way it sounded. It was weird. I actually convinced my brother to go see this with me in the theater the second time because I described the way the sound was working in one specific scene. He's like, I think I need to see this. But it is a haunted house movie, obviously. A bunch of invitations are sent to random people in LA to come and spend a night in this rich dude's house that he bought. No, it's an old mental institution that, what was it? Jeffrey Rush owns like a bunch of amusement parks. He's like filthy rich. He has a wife who hates him and wishes he was dead. He ends up saying that he's going to pay all these people to spend a night in this like supposedly haunted mental institution. Turns out supposedly it was fake, but it turns out it is real and everybody starts dying and stuff. And it's really fun and kind of creepy at times. There's some really cool effects, but there's like this one sound where a character's being driven crazy and there's like this pulsing sound that was actually so bass-filled that it was like shaking my chair in the theater. And like I told my brother that, it was like my chair was moving. And he thought it was like one of those gimmicky things they used to do back in the day, like with the Tingler, where there was like electric shock things in the chairs to give people little jolts during the movie. And it turns out that wasn't the case. It's just they had the bass turned up really high in the theater I was at. But it's pretty fun. Jeffrey Combs plays the villain in it, and he's great in anything you throw him into. So I really enjoyed it. It doesn't really hold up now, but I remember back when it first came out, like in 99, I thought it was pretty fantastic. Lisa Loeb, the singer, is in here. And it's also the first time I ever saw Allie Larder, my longtime film crush, in a movie. She is freaking gorgeous. Goddamn. Yeah, I think the only reason people went to see was to see Paris get killed. Yep. I love them both. That was the first Dark Castle movie. There's 13 Ghosts, which is coming out through Scream Factory, and I'm going to be ordering that when it comes out. There's your Matthew Lillard movie, Charlie. And there's a couple more. Ghost Ship, I think, is getting a remake, or not a remake, a re-release through Shout Factory also, or Scream Factory. I want to say Ghost Ship is probably my favorite out of all of them. That opening scene with the wire cutting through everybody in the beginning is awesome. Okay, 13 Ghosts I thought was pretty cool. It was really loud and obnoxious at times, but I like the idea of each of those ghosts, and I know they each had like a backstory and stuff. It was kind of neat. I can't wait to watch that again. Okay, so here's one. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. I love it. I think it is just so stupid that it is like hysterically funny. But I understand why people don't like it. But it's Howard the Duck. This is like 80s schlock at its finest. I remember watching this all the time when I was a kid. Every time it was on cable, I would watch it. It's based on a Marvel comic book I didn't know existed. I just thought it was just a movie that George Lucas came up with, because George Lucas produced this. Yeah, he was the executive producer on it. And it had Leah Thompson in it from Back to the Future, who I also had a crush on back in the day. I thought she was freaking gorgeous. But it's so stupid and dumb, it's funny. But this also has some stuff in it that scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. When, what's his name? Jeffrey Jones starts transforming into that Dark Overlord. And just the shit that he ends up doing, like that big tongue that comes out of his mouth and plugs into the cigarette lighter in the truck, that thing is freaking disgusting. But the finale with that stop motion Overlord thing running around through that NASA hangar is really, really cool. I liked it a lot. It is a dumb idea. I think it could have been way better than it ended up being. But for what we got, I thought it was pretty fun. It is incredibly stupid. But I do understand why people don't like it, because, like I say, I do think it is stupid. Here's another awesome Scream Factory release. The original Howling. I think this was the first movie I ever bought from Scream Factory. This is probably my favorite werewolf movie, because while it is serious and gory and all that, it is also kind of funny and kind of making fun of itself at the same time. But Joe Dante, it was like his first big movie. This is the movie that put Joe Dante on the map. I think he made Gremlins right after this. But it's a fantastic werewolf movie, and it has great makeup effects. And Robert Picardo, who played the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager, is the lead werewolf in this. And there's that big scene where he transforms really slowly, and they're trying to outdo what they did in American Werewolf in London. It's not quite there because this had less of a budget than American Werewolf in London did, but it's an equally cool transformation. I like it a lot. It's a very clever movie. Don't watch the sequels. I don't think any of them, except maybe Part 6, which is somewhat watchable, are any good. None of them especially the second movie. My dad absolutely loves The Howling, or he loved it. He's not around anymore. My dad absolutely loved The Howling. It was like one of his favorite movies of all time. And when the sequel was announced and it came out, my dad was so goddamn excited. I remember him just like, I cannot wait for this Friday. The Howling 2 is coming out. It's going to be amazing. And my brother, myself, and my mother went and saw one movie, and my dad was like, I'm going to see Howling 2. Fuck y'all. And when we were waiting for my dad to come out of that theater, when he finally did make it out, when his movie ended, and he just walked out of that theater looking so defeated and so sad. And my mom's like, how was the movie? And I just remember him looking up at her and goes, I don't want to talk about it. and I was just like, I didn't know what was going on. But when I finally did get around to seeing the movie, I was like, oh yes, this is garbage. Who thought this was a good idea? Ugh. Anyway, How to Train Your Dragon. I found this at The Exchange, which is like a media store, used media store by me. And this is the 3D version. I've seen only the first two. I didn't really think the second one was all that great. I do enjoy the first one quite a bit. I still need to see the third one. But it's a really fun kids animated movie. Actually, it has a little bit of adult stuff going on. I did not think that I would ever see an animated movie where a kid gets his leg bitten off. Like, the main character gets his leg bitten off. But, yeah, I really enjoy that one. I've yet to watch that in 3D at home. I never saw it in the theater. I only saw it when it came out on video. The Bowling. Is it the sequel to The Big Lebowski? Over the line! Guys, we're almost at an hour yet, and I've only made it through like one stack and a little bit of the second one. I need to speed up. Yes, I own a copy of Hulk. And this is not because I enjoy it. I think there were cool ideas in this. I think that it had the potential to be cool. It's just they decided to go really art housey with it, and that kind of like killed it. But it could have been awesome. But yeah, it's just really boring and kind of dumb. And the whole Absorbing Man thing at the end, I think, is terrible. But I wanted to get all the Marvel stuff, so I ended up picking this up like dirt cheap. I think I got this for like brand new for $5 off of Amazon one day. But Eric Bana is good in it. What's her name? I can never remember her freaking name. Jennifer Connelly is pretty good in it. Nick Nolte looks like he's having the time of his life playing a supervillain. But it's just I did not want to see an art house Hulk film. Hulk is all about Hulk smash, not Hulk sad. So I was just kind of like, eh. I do enjoy The Incredible Hulk a lot more. The one that's actually a part of the MCU. Here's an awesome one, Hunt for Red October. Absolutely love this movie. This is one of my favorite films of all time. I saw this in the theater the weekend it was released. My dad had read all the books, the Clancy books, that have Jack Ryan's character in it. I remember a guy sitting next to me in the theater, actually, like before the movie started, leaned over to me and asked me if I read the book. And this came out in 1990, so I was 15. And, like, the guy leaned over and was like, have you read the book? And I was just like, I'm 15, dude. I was like, I don't read that kind of stuff yet. But I eventually did, and it's a fantastic adaptation of that book. But I absolutely love it. It's got an absolutely fantastic soundtrack. I love the design of the Red October, like the interior and the exterior. It looks really, really cool. I love the idea of the stealth drive that it has. It makes it sound like whales banging underwater when it's been in use. It's just a really cool, tense, like, underwater action movie. It's just really cool. And the acting is, across the board, fantastic. John McTiernan directed that, the guy who did Die Hard. And like the guy knows his way. And Predator, he knows his way around those types of movies. And he was the perfect choice to helm it. Too bad the one that came out after that, I do not like at all. Patriot Games. I thought it was terrible. I have yet to see Hunter Killer. Oh, you mean Eric Bana? Edward Norton was in Incredible Hulk, which is more of a remake of the TV show than its own thing. Anyway, Charlie remembers this one. I think we saw this in the theater when I was a kid, or when we were kids. I Come in Peace. Here's another little Diamond in the Rough type movie. We were the only country that got this movie under the title I Come in Peace. Everywhere else in the world, it was called Dark Angel. But this is a Dolph Lundgren movie where Dolph Lundgren goes up against an intergalactic drug lord. This alien comes to Earth, steals a bunch of heroin, shoots up a bunch of random people with it, and then sucks out the endorphins out of their brain because that is a drug where he comes from. And actually, a space cop comes down to stop him and tells Dolph Lundgren, "You're the only one that can stop him now. You gotta do it," because Dolph Lundgren plays like an Earth cop. It is so weird, but really fun, like infectiously fun, I think, because every time I watch it, when it's over, I have a smile on my face. I don't know why. It is stupid and cheesy and hokey, but I absolutely love it. It is so much fun. The weapon that the alien bound the drug dealer uses are like basically CDs that can ricochet off walls and cut and for some reason are able to track people's throats. Like the guy throws them, they bounce off all the walls, and they always end up slashing someone's throat. I don't care. It's awesome. It's fantastic. Dark Angel, I Come in Peace, I don't care. Whatever it's called, I think it still holds up, and it's pretty fun. Here's another one, you can either love it or hate it. I didn't have any expectations for this at all. I didn't see it in the theater. I think my mother, it was my mother. So once my dad died, my dad was the media guy. My dad was the guy who bought all the movies. My dad was the guy that like did the video games and stuff like that. My mom doesn't know what to watch now that he's gone. So she basically will just go to Walmart, go to the video section, and just pick random movies from the rack that are brand new and buy them, and then she'll never watch them. So every time I go over there, she'll have like a new stack of movies, and I was like, why are you buying movies you've never seen before? I only buy the ones that I have seen. And I was like, let's watch these frickin' things. So one of the ones she bought was I, Frankenstein. And I think she thought it was like in that series where the Mummy, Tom Cruise Mummy movie, the Dark Universe thing. I think she thought this was supposed to be part of it, and I was like, no, this is not. This is a totally different thing. This is angels versus demons, and then there's a Frankenstein's monster in there too. So I hadn't seen it in the theater. I did want to see it. I just never got around to it. And we watched it, and it's schlocky as hell. It's kind of stupid at times, but you know what? I enjoyed it. It was like watching Underworld. Aaron Eckhart plays like Frankenstein's monster. Yes, the one from back in the day. He's called himself Adam, I do believe now. And he hunts like all the other monsters that are out there. And turns out there's angels who disguise themselves as gargoyles to watch over the earth or whatever. And there's these demons that are trying to find a way to be brought from hell onto our world. And the technology that, back in the day made him come to life is what will bring them to life also. And it turns into this like big underworld type thing where it's like instead of werewolves versus vampires, it's angels versus demons, and he's caught in the middle. And in 3D, it's pretty awesome. Didn't see it in 3D at all. I bought this used in 3D at Half Price Books, and I was just kind of like, okay, it actually is pretty cool looking. But the movie itself is just a schlocky little dumb action horror movie. It's not even any horror in it. It's just action, basically, with horror elements in it. But it's entertaining. I mean, you got what's his name? I can never remember his name either. Bill Nighy playing yet another villain who talks like he did in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and in the Underworld movies. He's like the lead demon guy. I think it's fun. It's entertaining. Here's one that was not in 3D in theaters, but for some reason when 3D TVs came out, some companies were taking like older movies like from their back catalog and converting them into 3D for whatever reason and releasing them on Blu-ray. So I went and picked up a bunch of them to see if it worked, and it does work. I just still think the movie's kind of but it's iRobot 3D, the Will Smith one, directed by Alex Proyas, who directed The Crow and Dark City, which are two of my favorite films of all time. And while the movie looks absolutely fantastic, I love the design of everything. Like, it takes place in Chicago, which is a plus. The designs of the robots is great. The design of the cars and the weapons and like the buildings and the art of everything, like the set designs are just great. It's just like it just takes too long to get where it needs to be. And plus, Alex Proyas stole scenes from a Ryuhei Kitamura movie called it wasn't Versus. It was Akumi, or Akumi, I think it was called. There's this scene at the very end when Will Smith is standing at the top of the computer brain thing in that big chamber where he jumps and falls, where he's standing on like a rail or a bar, and the camera's like spinning around him horizontal or vertically. It was stolen directly out of this martial arts movie that I saw like 5 years earlier, where the lead character is Zumi, I think it's called. Where the woman is standing on a bar of wood that's coming off of a house, and the camera starts doing that exact same movement as she's fighting somebody on that bar. And I was like, why would you do that, Alex Proyas? Why are you just blatantly stealing shit? But like I said, everything technically about it is great. I just think the story's kind of like, it was a short story that was like 30 pages long and got turned into a 2.5-hour movie. So, yeah. I think they were also planning on making that into a series of films because the movie just kind of like ends like on a cliffhanger. Like, oh, now what? So this is one of those movies that I put on whenever I'm depressed. This movie immediately cheers me up. I didn't actually think it was going to be funny at all, but I saw a sneak preview of it where the two stars were actually there and did like a Q&A afterwards. And we're talking, I love you, man. I took a couple of friends along with me to see the sneak preview of this, and we're both like, whatever. And all three of us, we were just like, okay, that was freaking hysterical. And now whenever I'm like down in the dumps, I pop like this or Caddyshack or Role Models in, and I'm immediately cheery again. Or like Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion is one of them too. But it's just like a really fun comedy about a guy who has like absolutely no male friends. He has like all female friends, and he's getting married. So Paul Rudd's getting married to who I think is very beautiful. Can never remember her name yet. Rashida Jones. But the thing is, he has no best man because he has no male friends, and he doesn't want to have to make his brother his best man because his brother's kind of an idiot. So he actually goes on a mission to make like a best male friend, and it's actually really fun, like sweet type of movie. It is so funny. I quote it all the time. This house isn't for me. Yeah, and it totally smells like farts too. I love it. It's so much fun. I could just put that on any day of the week. Like, I just come home in a bad mood and I just put it on. Absolutely love Android Assault. Absolutely. Game of the century. What's up, Neo Genesis? How you doing? Here's another little hidden gem. I hate that term. Diamond in the Rough type movie that not a lot of people might know about. I don't know if Charlie knows about this, but I, Madman. The guy who did The Gate, Tibor Takacs, did this right after he did The Gate. And it's one of those movies where, like, a character in a book breaks into reality. Where this girl who loves like pulp novels is reading one about this like murderous surgeon, and she believes in it so much that it actually like comes into reality. And it's really fun. I remember watching this a lot. This was one of those horror movies I was actually allowed to watch because we were allowed to watch The Gate in the theater. And because of that, and my mom was like, was it gory? Was it nasty? I was like, no, not really. So we were allowed to watch this for some reason. I think my dad might have watched it beforehand and was like, yeah, it's safe for the kids to watch because it's really not that nasty. It's just a really fun, pulpy horror movie, and it's kind of clever at times too. A lot of literary stuff going on in it. I highly recommend it. I love this tagline too. It's like, theirs is not a storybook romance. It's really entertaining. Here's a really cool one. Immortals 3D. This is, I think, the first time I saw Henry Cavill in a movie as a lead, and he did this right before Man of Steel. The guy who directed The Cell, Tarsem Singh directed this, and I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater. It's kind of like trying to be Greek, was not Greek, is it? Is it Greek? Theseus. Yeah, Greek. It's trying to be like 300, but trying to be like this really crazy. The thing about Tarsem Singh is he's all about set design and he's all about costume design. And if you saw the stuff that was in The Cell, transplant that into 300 and you have Immortals. It is bug nuts crazy. Like the fight scene at the end with that cell with all of the Titans in it is one of the craziest fight scenes I've ever seen. It is just gory as hell. Everything makes people bleed. With the mustache, yeah. It's really fun. My thing is the villain is Mickey Rourke, and he looks like a freaking alien. Like his face is just like, but outside of that, it's pretty fun. And Henry Cavill, like you see why they cast him as Superman after watching that. Here's another one that I didn't really know anything about. My brother and his girlfriend at the time dragged me to see this in the theater, and I was just kind of like, when it was over, I was like, that was kind of awesome. It's In Bruges. It's like a crime comedy movie with Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and Ralph Fiennes. And it's two hitmen like go on vacation to Bruges, and I don't know if they're on vacation or they're hiding. It's been a while since I've seen it. And it's like it turns into like this like romance thing. Like Colin Farrell ends up falling in love with the local girl and all that. And Ralph Fiennes comes to shoot them. And it's got some gory-ass shit going on in it. There's like a scene with Brendan Gleeson that every time I see it, my jaw drops. I mean, at least the 2 times I've seen it, I remember that. It's pretty awesome. I've bought this movie more times than I can count. Inception, I have the 4K version of it. This is also another one of my favorite movies. As much as I love the Batman movies that Christopher Nolan did, I think the movies he does in between the Batman movies I like more. I really love The Prestige. I love Inception. I don't like Interstellar. I do not. But I'm really looking forward to Tenet. That's probably going to be the first movie I see in the theater once they reopen all the theaters next month or this month. I think in a couple of weeks. But Inception is probably my favorite of his films. All about dreams and convincing people to do things in their dreams by hacking people's dreams and inserting yourself into them. It's a really bizarre idea, but it works. And the visuals are just, I think the visuals are what make this. Like the whole layering of dreams, and then in each dream layer that you go into, the previous one moves at a slower pace. So like, there's that one point in the movie where they're like 4 layers deep, and they keep showing you the original layer that they started in, and it's moving like at a snail's pace. And even if things are happening in reality, and your like equilibrium goes off while you're sleeping, and your people are in your dream, like it affects the world. Like I remember there's like a car accident that happens in one, and it affects the dream layer that's coming next, and everyone's like in zero gravity because they're falling. It's so freaking good. I love it. It's such a creative, fun movie. We're just talking about Hulk. Well, here's Incredible Hulk, the one that's part of the MCU with Edward Norton. I like this one a lot better. It's more based off of the old TV show from like the 70s and 80s. It actually borrows the entire setup from it at the beginning. And Edward Norton, I think, does make a better Bruce Banner than Eric Bana. This is the one that came out in 2008. It came out right after Iron Man. But this one is more action-oriented instead of trying to be like introspective and like, why does the Hulk exist? No, this one is just Hulk smash shit. They introduced the Abomination in this one. It's a lot of fun. This too could have been a lot better, but from what I understand, Edward Norton is kind of a bitch, and he like wants to take over every movie that he does. He tried to rewrite this movie in ways that just basically benefit him and fuck everyone else. Yeah, I know he claimed to be a huge fan of the comic books, but he was just trying to beef up his own role to make him look better than everyone else. But you know what? It's an ensemble piece too. There's other actors in here that are central to the story. So yeah, that's why they did not ask him to come back to play Bruce Banner in Avengers, and Mark Ruffalo's been playing the part ever since, and he is my favorite Bruce Banner. But it's a decent movie. It's really fun. I like it a lot. It's way better than the one that came out in 2003 or whatever, the one with Eric Bana. I'm probably going to repurchase this one. It's still sealed, but there's a 3D version I saw at Half Price Books, so at least I know it exists. And that's the original Incredibles. I think I saw this with Charlie in the theater also. One of my favorite Pixar movies. It's their take on a superhero film, and it's a lot of fun. I gotta start speeding through some of these. Gotta get through the stacks, because I'm already an hour down. Here's one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies, and that's Inglourious Bastards. This is the one that's all about World War II. And it's like one of Quentin Tarantino's like revisionist history movies, kind of like Django Unchained, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like they take events that happened in reality and change them drastically. Like, well, I don't want to ruin it if you haven't seen it, but something happens to a certain leader of the Nazi party that did not happen in reality, but we all wished it did. And it is so graphic and in your face. I remember when I saw it in the theater, people freaking cheered. It is pretty awesome. And it is actually one of, I think, the most brutal movies that Quentin Tarantino has done. It is really, really hard to watch at times, but it is great. And on top of it being, hard to watch and, about a horrible period in history, it's actually kind of funny. Best Fantastic Four film ever. What you talking about, man? Oh, Incredibles. Yeah, basically, yeah. Okay, so I was a Kickstarter backer. Yeah, I was a Kickstarter backer on this one. My name is in the end credits. One of the YouTube channels I've been watching for years. I've actually tried to get this guy to be in on one of my collabs. One of the few bigger YouTubers who I've actually sent a request to about being in one of my big collabs on my channel, who actually responded and said, I don't have time, but I wish you luck and all that kind of stuff. Like, it was really nice of him to do that. A lot of the bigger ones I send emails to, they just ignore it. I'm like, at least tell me no. But anyway, this guy, Oliver Harper, is the name of his channel. He does like retrospectives of movies from his childhood, and you can watch like the beginning of his channel to where it is right now, and his editing and the way he delivers, like he does like narration on every video, like his narration has gotten so much better to the point where he was just kind of like, you know what, I might as well make a freaking documentary. And he did. And it's called In Search of the Last Action Heroes, and it's all about action movies from the 80s into the 90s and the 2000s. And it's pretty fantastic. He actually gathered up so much footage talking to people who crossed over, who also were in action movies back then, who also had done science fiction movies during those time periods, and horror movies in those time periods, that he ended up making 2 other documentaries at the same time, unintentionally, from what it sounds like. One's In Search of Darkness, which is the horror one, and one is In Search of the Future, or something like that, which is the science fiction one, which is fantastic, and I totally missed out on those Kickstarters. But check this one out when it first showed up. This was my reward for backing it. I basically just wanted to give him enough money so I can get a copy of it. I totally had forgotten that I had given him enough money to get my name in the credits, so when I was watching it, there's actually like still some more interview footage being shown over the end credits, and I remember I was watching one of the interviews and I just happened to glance over and there's my name. And I went like, what? I gave him that much money? Wow, okay, I'm in this movie. But it's all about like the rise of action movies, like, you know, with using people who weren't actors like Chuck Norris and Arnold Schwarzenegger to the point where we got where who cares about those people? Actually, actors can do all these action movie things too. Like, they say the movie that ruined action movies for people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Van Damme and Steven Seagal was Nicolas Cage in The Rock. Because Nicolas Cage was known as being like an Oscar type of actor, you know, guy that did like, you know, important, you know, dramas. And he did The Rock, and they showed that he can do action just like anyone else, and all of a sudden everybody was doing stuff like that. So it was really interesting to watch, and I liked it a lot. It's a pretty cool documentary. I highly recommend checking it out if you can. It might actually be streaming on Amazon Prime. I showed Charlie every movie, well, the first 3 movies in this series, I want to say like a year or 2 ago, because we were going to go see the 4th movie in the theater that night, so he wanted to see it, and I was like, well, have you seen any other movies in the series? He's like, no. I'm like, well, guess what? I'm going to catch you up. Yeah, I need to get In Search of Darkness, and I need to get the In Search of the Future, or whatever the science fiction one is. I need to get that. I'm sure I can buy them somewhere. But we're talking the Insidious films. Insidious 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Insidious The Last Key, which is the 4th film. I really like this series. I really, really do. I won tickets to see an advanced screening while I was unemployed to see a screening of the first movie. I knew nothing about it other than the fact that James Wan, who was directing it, who had done the first Saw movie, and what was it, Death Warrant, I think was the name of the movie. The movie with Kevin Bacon was basically a remake of Death Wish. And he did one other movie too. Oh, the one about the puppet, which I thought was freaking awful. Anyway, so this was him trying to break back into horror, but they were trying to do it PG-13. It only had $1 million budget, just as much. I think it had less money than he had when he made the original Saw. He had like a $1 million budget, and he was like, I'm not doing any special effects. There's no CGI. I think there's maybe one shot in the movie that was assisted by CGI, but that's it. But it just took me by surprise. It was really creepy and awesome, and like I love the characters. I love the whole world that it creates. The Nether, or whatever it was called, is pretty awesome. I like the idea of that. And the first movie ended up being like a surprise, fun horror movie for me. I thought it was fantastic. And I was really excited for Chapter 2. And turns out that when James Wan finished the first Insidious, he went on to make The Conjuring. But he was contractually obligated to do another film for, what is it, Warner Brothers? Oh, Sony. And that ended up being this. So this is just like this rushed movie that he made. He cranked it out like right after he finished The Conjuring. You didn't like Insidious? I loved Insidious. But this is the one where I'm just kind of like, because it's just retreading the exact same ground all over again. Yeah, you get a little bit of extra insight into that ghost that was haunting Josh's character when he was a kid. But the only thing that I did like about it was at the very end, they pull a frickin' Saw on you, where in each progressive Saw movie, you start to see things that you thought were inconsequential in the movie before it, and they shed a new light on it from a different person's perspective, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, now that's kind of cool. I did not realize that's what was going on in that scene, but now that I have the extra information, it gives a whole new meaning to the movie that came before it. So all the stuff that was randomly happening in the first movie, you find out why it was happening there in the second movie, and that was the stuff I liked. But the actual plot line and all the stupid boo scares and stuff, it was just a repeat of the first movie all over again. I kept on saying that there was more time spent watching doors slowly open in this movie than actual plot and character development. Then there's Insidious Chapter 3, which is a prequel that's all about how Elise, the medium character that's played by Lynn Shay, and she is fantastic in these movies, by the way, how she met her little ghost hunting troupe. And it's a decent movie. It's okay. There's a lot of stuff stolen from other horror movies in here, like the eyeball in the throat from A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is stolen in this. But it's fun. It could have been better. And then there's the fourth movie, which I barely remember, because I do remember we went and saw like a late show of this after watching like the first three movies. And I remember I fell asleep at some point because it was so late at night. And I missed like a good 10-minute chunk of the movie. But the thing is, I need to rewatch it. I've bought it, and I haven't yet watched it since I bought it because it's still sealed. But I need to watch it again. But I remember what I saw of it I did like. So there's that. But that is a sequel to the prequel. Which is strange. In the Line of Fire, which is kind of an action thriller. Clint Eastwood is a Secret Service agent that's trying to protect the president from an assassin who's played by John Malkovich. And yeah, it's entertaining. Not as great as I remember it being back in the day. I remember when I saw this in the theater back then, I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. I was just like, that was so tense and awesome and so well made. And I watch it now, I'm just like, it's kind of slow. And why is Clint Eastwood falling in love with a woman who's like 30 years younger than him? That's kind of gross. But it's a fun little action thriller type thing. Here's another awesome one that I got from Scream Factory. I want to call it Shout Factory, but it's Scream Factory. This is one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. And this is the third movie in his Apocalypse trilogy, which is The Thing, his remake of The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. This is John Carpenter's H.P. Lovecraft homage movie with Sam Neill and Jürgen Prochnow. It is fantastic. It is one of the best mindfuck movies you'll ever see. It is just twisted and awesome, and it's just so well made. It's like one of John Carpenter. I love John Carpenter's movies. Like, his stuff seems thought out, and sometimes it's like ahead of the curve. But this one, it was just like he didn't really have a huge budget for this. But it's so well thought out and meticulously planned that I was just kind of like, I can't believe that he made this with the budget that he had. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite horror movies, one of my favorite John Carpenter films. Here's a funny one that I got through Scream Factory. I saw this in the Dollar Theater when I was a kid. My dad wanted to see it more than I did. It's a remake of a science fiction movie from the 50s. It's Invaders from Mars. Yeah, Mouth of Madness is awesome. I'm still hoping that we get Guillermo del Toro's The Mountains of Madness that he's been trying to make for like 10, 15 years. I hope we get that at some point. But Invaders from Mars is a silly cheeseball remake of the original science fiction movie. Karen Black is in it, who was like the queen of like schlocky B movies back in like the 70s and all that. Her son plays the little kid in the movie, and he is not a good actor. But it has a decent cast. Stan Winston did like all of the creature effects in it, and they are awesome. But it's basically about a kid thinks he sees a UFO land in his backyard one night during a storm, and nobody believes him, so it's got that whole Boy Who Cried Wolf thing going on. But everyone that goes back there to check out the crash site comes back different, including his parents. And it turns out it's like this whole alien plot, and it's really fun and entertaining. It's directed by Tobe Hooper, the guy who did Poltergeist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it was like part of his deal with Cannon Films. And this is, I think, the second movie he made with Cannon. He did Life Force, this, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I think it's fun. It could have been a lot better. It's really short. But it's also really violent for little kids' movies. There was stuff in here that scared the shit out of me. This movie came out in like 86? 86. And some of it scared me back in the day. I will not lie. Teenagers from Mars. Although Life Force, thankfully, did not have the original title that it had in book form, which was called Space Vampires. Life Force sounds better. Anyway, The Iron Giant, which is the movie that introduced me to Vin Diesel. Brad Bird directed this animated film. Brad Bird ended up doing The Incredibles and Ratatouille and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. What? But it's a old school throwback animated movie that actually feels very Disney-esque without being a Disney movie, and it also has like a moral to it, which is kind of strange that, that actually came out instead of it just being like a generic, let's pander to kids animated movie. It's fantastic. And Eugene from E.C. Myers Vids YouTube channel did one of my movies that would make great video games collab videos, and his pick for a movie he wished had a video game adaptation was The Iron Giant, and for good reason. There's a lot of stuff in here that would have made for a really good game. But I love the whole I'm not a gun, the whole preconception thing, like I'm not a gun, I'm not a weapon. I thought that was really great. Really, really good. So good. It is one of the best animated movies that nobody ever saw, because it bombed in the theaters and it got like outstanding reviews across the board. There's nobody saw it because it wasn't a Disney movie. And then when it came out on home video, it became a huge thing, and Brad Bird became the it guy. So now we've got the trifecta of the Iron Man, original Iron Man 2, and Iron Man 3, which I do have in 3D. First Iron Man, pretty good. It just falls apart in the last act for me because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. But as a setup for the MCU, it's a fantastic movie. Robert Downey Jr. was a fantastic choice for Tony Stark. Didn't think he could do it when they first announced it. I was just like, why are you going to give the reins of this multi-million-dollar jumping off point for a series of movies to it, this ex-drug addict guy? And turns out he was the perfect person for it, and he's what made these Marvel movies what they are nowadays. Second movie is not good as far as I'm concerned. I think it is kind of terrible, actually. I just don't like it. It feels rushed and just pointless a little bit. It's a lot of repeated stuff from the first movie. Why does everyone have to have a freaking Iron Man suit? It's just, and I do not like Mickey Rourke in the movie as the villain. Just that, where's Burrt? Shut up. Just stop talking. And then Iron Man 3 is the one that nobody seems to like because of the whole switcheroo they did with the Mandarin. But since I knew nothing about that character, I found it pretty awesome. I always thought that was a really clever thing they did. They did the whole misdirection thing, and I liked it a lot. And I also liked the fact that it didn't feel like your stereotypical superhero movie. It was kind of like a detective movie a little bit, too. And I liked that a lot. And then once you find out the whole Mandarin thing, I was dying. I was laughing so hard because at the same time, Ben Kingsley is doing something he never usually does in that movie. You'd think he's doing one thing and he's doing something else. And when they finally do the big reveal as to who he is, I was on the floor laughing. I thought it was a really cool twist on the formula, which I thought they kind of ruined the series of this series of movies with part 2. But part 3 I thought made it better. And I liked where it ended with him having the arc reactor removed from his chest and all that. I need to move on type of thing. I thought that was great. Iron Sky. The movie's about the Nazis from space. There's actually a sequel to this. So, I work for a German company. And one day while at work, one of the Germans, who didn't speak a whole lot of English, said to me, "You see Iron Sky?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "You see Iron Sky, trailer for Iron Sky." And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, "Watch trailer, you laugh." And I went, "Okay." So I went home and I watched the trailer, and I was really surprised that a guy that I worked with, who was from Germany, wanted me to watch something about Nazis from space. I thought that they would have been like, "Don't touch that. No, we don't want to have anything to do with that." But he thought it was funny as hell. So I came back to work the next day, and he goes, "You see Iron Sky?" And there's a scene in the trailer where they show the little Nazi kids being trained at the Nazis are on the moon, by the way, in the movie. They're being trained in school, and they're like, "Where do we live?" From the dark side of, or where do we come from? The dark side of the moon. So I walk into work the next day, and he goes, "You see Iron Sky?" I go, "We're from the dark side of the moon." And he almost fell over. He was laughing so hard. And it ended up playing at only maybe 2 or 3 theaters in the city. And who goes along with me to see it? 2 different Germans from my work. And I was afraid to laugh, because the movie is making fun of the whole Nazi thing. It's it's a parody. And I had to keep looking at them to see if it was okay to laugh. They were dying. They were cracking up. So I was like, okay. It's a stupid, silly, cheesy movie. I think this was a Kickstarter backed movie. They got all the money to make it through Kickstarter. And it's Nazis from outer space. And it's stupid, and it's silly, and it's dumb, but it's kind of entertaining and really funny at times. I still haven't been able to bring myself to watch the sequel, though, because I don't know if that was a good idea. But actually, there was a video game based on that that's available on Steam, and it's like playing Wing Commander. What? The Island. This is a Michael Bay movie that kind of came out of nowhere. I remember this was the movie that got him the job directing Transformers. Because Steven Spielberg produced this. I mean, it was made through DreamWorks, Spielberg's company. And I guess he liked Michael Bay. You know, when he was working, he met Michael Bay and worked a little bit with him, I guess, on set, and was like, yeah, this is the guy I want making my Transformers movie. Yeah, Ewan McGregor, I'll see anything with Ewan McGregor in it. This is the first movie where, like, Scarlett Johansson did anything action-oriented before she did Iron Man 2. The last time I think I had seen her in a movie before this was Eight-Legged Freaks. But yeah, it is a strange movie that is all about cloning and rich people being dicks and stuff like that, and I like it a lot. There's some great action scenes in it too. That whole hover bike action scene over the highway with the train, or was it the train wheels and stuff, was crazy but awesome. Part 1 or Chapter 1 of It, I got this on the 4K. Found this at Half Price Books of all places. I really like the first part, the first chapter, which is all about. It's like the first half of the book. It's all about the kids coming into contact with Pennywise and how it, you know, ended up scarring them all for life type of thing. This one I really, really like. Yeah, it's a little too heavily reliant on boo scares and, like, really freaking loud bass. I do not understand what the director's obsession with bass in his movies is. Holy shit. But I remember that... Oh, the kid that was in the first Maze Runner movie... And he was the annoying, geeky kid in We're the Millers. He was going to play Pennywise at first, and then he got recast with Bill Skarsgård. Bill Skarsgård is perfect as Pennywise. He is pitch perfect, and I didn't realize... I was used to watching the old TV movie, or the miniseries, which I do not think holds up at all anymore. I think it's awful now. But that whole scene with Georgie getting his arm ripped off in the sewer, I didn't think they were actually going to show it in the movie. Well, guess what? The movie opens with this little kid getting his arm ripped off and him crawling around, gushing blood all over the place. I was like, okay, we're doing this. This is going to show kids being murdered. And it became a huge hit. Normally when kids are getting murdered in movies, yeah, they bomb for some reason. Just people don't want to go see it. The second chapter is the one that I wasn't a big fan of. I just thought it was kind of... Which is the way Stephen King's books normally go, where like the second half of the books are usually kind of meh. Here's one I knew nothing about, but I never saw it. This is one of the few movies I bought sight unseen, but so many people had told me that I needed to have this in my collection that I found this steelbook version of it at Half Price Books for like $5, so I picked it up, and it's It Follows. It's like an indie horror movie, really low budget, but it's basically saying something about like STDs. So what happens is there's like this ghost. Well, they don't really tell you what it is, but I always say it's kind of like a ghost that's haunting people. But you pass the ghost along to somebody so it will leave you alone through sex. So this thing will follow you wherever you go, and eventually it will kill you. And the only way you can get it to stop following you is to give it to somebody else through intercourse. And it's like kind of like an STD. And it is really, really well made and really good and really frightening. It feels like a John Carpenter movie. Even the music is John Carpenter-esque. It sounds like the music that he did in The Fog. And I thought it was really fantastic. At first I was watching it and I was like, I don't know if I like this. Because it was just really strange. And then once like the theme of it started coming up, I was like, oh, I get it. And it's just really, really good. It is so good. And even though you find... Like, there's some really good boo scares in it. Like, you never know when the thing is going to... The ghosty thing is actually going to find you. Like I said, you can go as far as you want away from where the last time you saw it was. It will find you. You just don't know when it's going to pop up. And when it does, it pops up in the weirdest places. And it always shows up as somebody different. It's not necessarily somebody you know that it shows up as. It'll just show up as somebody I think it had haunted previously. Or somebody from your memory. Like, it's not really explained. But it's always somebody different, and it's always somebody frightening. It's really, really cool. The ghost version of AIDS? No. Here's a really fun one, The Italian Job. It's a remake of a 60s movie, I want to say, but I never saw it. But I'm a huge fan of Jason Statham. All of my friends we all go to see the Jason Statham movies together. What's up, Benny? How's it going? We always go to see Jason Statham movies in the theater, so when this came out, we were like, yeah, regardless of the fact that Marky Mark's in it, Charlize Theron's in it, and I love her. And Jason Statham's in it. We're going. And Seth Green too. What? Yeah, it's just a fun little like heist movie. Really overly reliant on Mini Coopers, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I like it a lot. Okay, guys, 2 stacks. Actually, 1.5 stacks left. We're getting there. The original Jack Reacher. There's 2 movies in this series, but I want to say there's like 15 books in the series that this is based on. But this is, I think, based on the 3rd book in the series, but the first movie. Really, really fun. I liked it a lot. I didn't know what to expect. I was expecting, I think, something akin to Mission Impossible, but no, it's like just a thriller about this ex-army guy, I think he was Army, who is kind of like almost like a detective for hire, kind of. And everything always has to do it has to do with something within the military. It's really cool. It's a really cool character. I like it a lot. XMP, that was it. Yeah, I like it a lot. I did not know, like I said, I did not know what to expect, and it was kind of awesome. I did not like the sequel, however. What was it? No Turning Back or whatever it was called. I thought it was garbage. Here's one that I thought was going to be shit, and it turned out to be kind of awesome, and that is Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit. I remember seeing the trailer for this, and they made it look like a Michael Bay movie. And I was like, Jack Ryan is not running around and dodging bullets and jumping off of cars and shit like that. Jack Ryan is an analyst. He basically sits behind a desk, and he just ends up having to, I mean, like, in the other movies, he just ends up being in a situation where he kind of has to do something like that, but it's not like him looking for those situations, you know what I mean? Like, he ended up on the Red October and Hunt for Red October, and just so happened that there was a traitor on board that shot at him, and he was the guy that ended up having to go after the guy. It wasn't, like I said, it doesn't feel like he is trying to be an action hero. Like, you watch Clear and Present Danger, he doesn't do any action hero stuff at all. Yeah, he ends up, like, trying to run after a helicopter at one point, but it's because he's trying to get away from the bad guy. So I was really pissed off when I saw the trailer for this. I'm like, that's not Jack Ryan. But I went and saw it anyway. My mother was like, I want to see that Jack Ryan movie when I was visiting one day. And I was like, okay, fine, we'll go see the Jack Ryan movie. And it was actually kind of awesome. It is not an action movie like the trailers are making it out to be, which is why I think it bombed, because people like me saw that trailer and said, that's not Jack Ryan, I will not watch it. Turns out it's just like all those other Jack Ryan movies they have made. They just kind of showed some of the action-y stuff a little too much in the trailer. It's actually pretty cool. It's a really neat thriller that's a prequel to all the other ones that have come out before. So you actually see how Jack Ryan gets hurt in the military and why he ends up switching over to being an analyst for the CIA. It's really cool. I like it a lot. And Kenneth Branagh directed it, and he actually plays the villain in it too. It's a really good movie. I liked it a lot. Surprised the hell out of me. So here's another you're going to love it or hate it thing. I wish this was actually released on a 3D Blu-ray and not one of the Blu-rays that requires you to wear glasses. But Charlie saw this with me in the theater. This is the second time I saw it in the theater was with him. But we're talking Jackass 3. This is the one that was in 3D. And while I can do without the Pucano, there is some stuff in here that literally, like, I laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. I understand that Jackass is incredibly stupid. I mean, it is just guys hurting themselves. But the guys that are in the group are so much fun to watch, and you can tell they're all such good friends that they are willing to let each other do this stupid shit to each other over and over and over again. That's why I think people keep coming back to the movies. It's not the stunts. I mean, yeah, that's a bonus, but it's just because they seem like a really cool group of people. And I was like legit sad when Ryan Dunn died, because he was my favorite guy in the group, because whenever something stupid was suggested to the group, he was the guy that always spoke out and was like, no. He was like the guy with the brain. And yeah, I was really bummed when he died. But yeah, it's stupid stunts and stuff like that, but there is just some stuff like the fire hose rodeo when the guy landed on his ass and he stands up, he's like, I think I broke my ass. It cracks me up. But yeah, the Pucano I think was going a little too far. But I still laugh like crazy at this. And plus that high five thing is awesome. It is stupid, it is. But they're not saying that it isn't. So they're living up to all the expectations. They know it's dumb, which is why they do it. Dumb makes the money. Probably my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie ever is Jackie Brown. And the funny thing about this is I absolutely hated it when I first saw it in the theater, because I was basically expecting another Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs type of movie with the time jumping that they did. Because I was expecting that to be Tarantino's thing. It's going to be all about the time jumps. And this was more of just a straightforward 70s themed like thriller. Like I wouldn't say blaxploitation, but it was just trying to be like a throwback thriller. And it had a lot of people from that era, like Pam Grier and Robert Forster and stuff like that. And it's fantastic. I watched it again because I remember we walked out of the theater and I was like, that was garbage. And everyone I was with was like, what the hell is up with you? That was awesome. I was like, I couldn't stand it. But I ended up watching it again and I absolutely fell in love with it. I was like, okay, I get it now. I get what it's trying to do and I'm with it. And every time I watch this, I like it more. There's so much good stuff in it. I just can't help but like it. It is so good. And the ending is fantastic. I love the soundtrack. I have the soundtrack to this on vinyl. Like all those Motown songs. Like Quentin Tarantino was like the king of picking appropriate songs for his movies. It's just so freaking awesome. What's up? I don't give a thumb. How's it going? Here's a great franchise that I know Charlie absolutely loves with every fiber of his being. Jaws. Jaws 2 and Jaws 3. I will never own a copy of Jaws the Revenge. Number one, because it has that stupid direct-to-video ending where they reshot the ending of the movie in a bathtub. Bathtub. Why? Your movie cost $12 million to make. Why will you shoot your finale in the bathtub? Yeah, if you've ever seen Jaws the Revenge, the original movie ended with the shark being shocked with this thing that they attached to the shark. It shocks it. It jumps out of the water, and the front of the boat rams it in the throat, and you actually see like the shark thrashing around, just blood is gushing out of its throat, and its weight breaks the front of the boat off, and the boat sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Or the front of the boat with the shark's corpse on it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. For some reason, I guess they thought that was too gory or whatever. That just wasn't fitting for a Jaws movie. So when it came out on home video, they shot a new ending where the shark gets stabbed in the throat and then its head randomly explodes for no reason, and it's like a toy blowing up. It is literally in a bathtub. Makes no sense. I don't understand. I saw it in the drive-in, hated it then. But I was like, when I saw it on home video, I was just like, what? Like, what? How? Oh, that's not what I remember. But anyway, Jaws. Fantastic horror movie. I don't think it would have turned out as good as it did if it wasn't for the fact that the shark didn't work. Because of the fact that the shark was badly designed and it was not designed to like operate in salt water, which would constantly like make the mechanics inside of it break, and it would sink to the bottom of the ocean every time they would put it in the water because they didn't decide to make, maybe we should make this thing buoyant. It's going in the water. That they ended up having to use the camera like the shark, and you never really see it until the very, very end of the movie, like the last 30 minutes of the movie. It's the first time you actually get a really good look at the shark. And it works. But the thing is, the movie's not about the shark. The movie's about the characters, and the characters are fantastic. Chief Brody, Hooper, what's his name? I can never remember Robert Shaw's character's name in this movie. But it's all about the characters and the shit that's going on in their lives, and then a shark just happens to show up and fuck it up for everybody. It's a great movie. It's the movie that made Steven Spielberg a hit. It's the movie that made the summer blockbuster season. Back in the day, summer was dead season for movies because nobody wanted to go out and sit in a non-air conditioned theater ever. Quint, yes, thank you, Quint. I can never remember that guy's name. Yeah, back then theaters weren't really air conditioned, so no one wanted to sit in a giant box with a bunch of other people and sweat to death watching a movie. People were willing to put up with it after this because this broke all kinds of box office records, and everybody loved it, and it made summertime, like you wouldn't have had Star Wars if it wasn't for this, because Star Wars was the other big like summer tentpole movie. Fantastic, fantastic movie. It is so well made, the music is great, just everything about it is like pitch perfect. Absolutely love it. And then we have Jaws 2, which feels just like the first movie. I mean, like, it feels like it takes place, like, it feels like Spielberg made it. They filmed it in the same places. They filmed it with a lot of the same actors. Yeah, Robert Shaw, obviously he died in the first movie. He wasn't coming back, but Richard Dreyfuss didn't come back. But Roy Scheider did. And I think the fact that he was trying to drive himself crazy while making it because he didn't want to make it, he was contractually obligated to make it, that he was trying to convince the producers that he was crazy so they would fire him, makes his performance in the movie even better because the whole movie is about him trying to convince all the people on the city board that another shark has come to hunt people off the coast. And like he's supposed to look unhinged, which is why they don't believe him. And I think him actually doing that in real life helped his character in the movie, which I thought was great. It does end up being kind of like a slasher movie. The shark will just like pop up randomly in places where it shouldn't be. There is a lot more killings in this one. So where that one was just about it attacking just random people, bathers and stuff on the beach, and then it goes after the boat at the end where they're hunting the shark. This one's it's following a group of like kids who are sailing, and it's hunting these kids. And it randomly goes after scuba divers and water skiers and shit like that over the course of the movie. It's more graphic than the first movie. I think it's actually a little bit scarier in some areas. Yeah, the shark eats a helicopter. But they really do some cool stuff, like they scar the shark at the beginning when the woman sets it on fire and half of its face looks like Freddy Krueger and all that, and it gives it like this really unique look. It like I said, it feels like a natural continuation of the first movie. It's just not nearly as good. That's really what I want to say. But then we have my personal favorite, which is Jaws 3. I saw this in the drive-in because my dad, for some reason, thought Jaws in 3D was going to be like the coolest thing of all time. So I remember he was super excited, and we went and saw Jaws 3 on a double bill with Krull at the drive-in. So I had never seen a Jaws movie up to this point. And so the first movie that introduces me to this is in 3D. I was scarred for fucking life. This is the movie that made me afraid of the ocean and afraid of sharks. I will never go in a body of water that is not chlorinated because of this movie. Absolutely. Scared the shit out of me. So, naturally, I watched it every single time it was on cable. I watched this movie probably 30, 40 times back in the day because in 1983, you only had like HBO and Cinemax and maybe Showtime. They only would buy maybe 5 movies to play a month. They did not have like all this original programming and like they get 100 movies to play every month. They only had maybe 5 movies, and they would play that shit in a loop all day long. Jaws 3 would probably play about 6 or 7 times a day. And you know what? I watched it probably every single time it played. And I just really have like a fondness for this one. Even though I know it is garbage and it is stupid and it's dumb, it is also super graphically violent for a PG-rated movie. Like, there's a severed arm in 3D that comes right at your face. Like, the bone and everything. It is disgusting. There's a guy with an eyeball popping out of his head at your face. And it is gross as hell. The thing is, when I bought this on Blu-ray, I had no idea that as an extra, a bonus, it has the 3D version. The 3D Blu-ray version on it. So I was able to watch this in 3D. I've never seen it in 3D since I saw it in the drive-in. They're actually playing it in 3D at a theater by me at one point, but I missed out on it. I was dying. I was really pissed that I missed it. But now I can watch it anytime I want at home. And I liked the 3D in it so much, I put it on my list of 3D Blu-rays you need to watch on your PSVR, the first video that I did on the subject. And this was like number 3 or 4 on my list. It turned out to be that good. It is a trashy movie that is basically a gigantic ad for SeaWorld, but it is also super violent and should not have been rated PG. That is an R-rated movie in a PG, outfit. It is disgusting at times. And then we have one of the few movies, I keep on saying I don't buy sight unseen, I bought because I found this at Half Price Books for like $7 or $8, and I never got a chance to see it in the theaters because it got like a limited release, but it's the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. It's Kevin Smith's latest movie. Still haven't watched it. Probably watch it this weekend, now that I remember that I have it. But yeah, it's basically part, 4 or 5 in the Jay and Silent Bob series of things that they appear in. Some of them don't really have anything to do with him. I don't know. How many movies have they made with Jay and Silent Bob in it? I cannot remember. But I need to watch it. I absolutely need to watch it. I haven't checked it out yet. Never got a chance to see it in the theater, so I can't really comment. But there's also Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which I did see in the theater at least 3 times. Jaws 3 is in 3D on the Blu-ray. Yes. It's like I said, they don't really advertise it. I was just looking at the extras when it showed up, and it's listed in the extras, like Jaws in 3D, and it's the 3D that you can watch on your regular TV, and it works really well. Still scares the shit out of me. There is a shot in Jaws 3 where when they trap the shark inside that giant pump, and as it's breaking out, swimming backwards, which makes no sense, there's a long shot of the shark from the front, from like way back, and the shark, the way its mouth is open, looks like the freaking devil. It is scary as hell. It's still when I was watching it on my PSVR, when I saw that shot in 3D, like it haunted my dreams for at least 2 nights. That's how scary that was to me. But anyway, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. This was the 5th movie, maybe 4th or 5th movie with Jay and Silent Bob in it. But it's like making fun of Hollywood. Cock knocker. Mark Hamill. Cheer, kids. Really funny movie. Saw this in the theater with my friend who also had never seen any of the Highlander movies before we took him to see part 4. We took him to see this and he had never seen any of the previous Kevin Smith movies. So he was completely lost, but he still found it funny, which still shocks the hell out of me that he found any of this funny. But because of that, he ended up wanting to see all of his movies and I showed them to him. Saw this with Charlie. Almost World Blu-ray Collection. Yeah, what's up, Cabot? How's it going? That was last stream? Yep. So I saw this with Charlie in the theater. This is Jigsaw. It's Saw 7. It's trying to so it was trying to be a sequel and a reboot at the same time. Excuse me. Didn't quite work. It kind of bombed at the theater in the same way that each of like the Saw movies after part 3 just slowly started a decline in how much money it would make, profit it would make. This, I think, kind of continued the downward slope. I really liked this one. I liked it a lot because I liked the twist where the time period thing that was going on in this one too. They mess with your mind a little bit. Plus, the final kill in this movie is freaking fantastic. Holy crap, that laser thing, like my jaw dropped. I remember we saw this on the IMAX and we're just like, I was at least like, what? And like, okay, I'm sold. Now they are completely rebooting this with Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson. It's called blah, 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 blah. Spiral. Looking forward to it. I want to see what they can do with a bigger budget, but I don't know how it's going to connect to these. If it's considered a sequel, if it's actually rebooting it, I don't know. See, everybody's on the Crawl train tonight. I love it. Crawl for life. Here's another one of those like diamonds in the rough that nobody gave a shit about when it came out in theaters, but I liked it the first time I saw it. And a lot of people I know do too. This is actually going to be part of the 5th and final movies that would make great video games. This is a selection by one of the Crawl board game. I used to have the Crawl board game when I was a kid, but my parents threw it away because it kind of got trashed. John Carter, and this is the 3D version. Yeah, this was Disney before Marvel. Was it before Marvel? I think this was right around the time when they bought Marvel. Yeah, this came out around, I think, the same year as the first Avengers, and the Avengers was the first movie that they released. But yeah, it was Disney when they were still trying to make franchises like crazy. They didn't have Star Wars yet. I think they had just bought Marvel, and they were trying to make as many franchises as they possibly could. They had the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, so they're like, hey, there's all these books in this, Princess of Mars series. Let's do it. Let's make this series into a thing. And like nobody went and saw it because the name sucks. The name of the book that this is based on is A Princess of Mars. I can understand them not wanting to call it that. It sounds like a Disney movie, If they called it John Carter of Mars, I thought it would have worked. But they didn't. But even in the movie, they show you that they thought it should have been called John Carter of Mars, because when the movie ends, it says John Carter, like, you've been watching John Carter, and then Of Mars pops up underneath it. And I was like, yeah, that's what you should have called this thing. But it's a really fun, like, science fiction movie. I really, really liked it. This dude from, I want to say, like, the late 1800s, ends up getting teleported to Mars. And becomes like a hero there. Like, it turns out because Mars has lower gravity compared to us, he's considered super strong. He's stronger than anybody on Mars because, his muscles get more of a workout than you do on Mars, so he can jump great distances. He's obviously stronger. Makes some friends, makes some enemies. And it's just really, really fun. I liked it a lot. It's really creative. I read the book that this is based on after I saw the movie because I liked the movie so much. And while things are moved around in the movie, things that happen in the movie happen at different times in the book. And the book is written in a specific way that I thought was really charming, that's kind of missing from here. I was really looking forward to this being a franchise, but it just bombed completely. Like, nobody gave a shit. Tron, they tried to reboot Tron. That didn't work, although I love the Tron movies completely. This didn't work, and Tomorrowland was another one that they tried, and that did not work. No, this was Edgar Rice Burroughs. But I think it's a fantastic movie. And in 3D, I saw this on the IMAX in 3D with a couple of friends and my ex. And all of us were like, that was pretty cool. And we're expecting them to make sequels. But then it just, nobody went and saw it other than us, pretty much. Okay, here's one that I don't like, but I like it because it's cyberpunk. And I love cyberpunk. It's like my favorite sci-fi subgenre. Johnny Mnemonic. Saw this in the theater. I had super high hopes. I had read a couple of short stories by... oh, God. Why am I forgetting everybody's name? It's because I'm tired as shit. That's why. William Gibson. I read Neuromancer, and I had read I Adore You, and I was, like, super excited for this, because I was like, cyberpunk. We're finally going to get that Shadowrun movie I've always wanted. And I saw it in the theater, and I was, like, supremely disappointed. It was, like, dirt. It was, like, really cheap and hokey, and, like, Keanu Reeves, like, was, like, asleep the whole time. It's just, I don't know, like, the dialogue is terrible. That whole thing about him wanting room service, I'm just like, will you just shut up and stop talking. It felt like a direct-to-video movie to me. And then when it came out on home video, I was working at that video store, and for some reason, the pan and scan version of it made it more exciting for some reason. Like, it just felt like it flowed more, or flowed better. So I was like, okay, maybe I misjudged this movie. Maybe it is, maybe I do like it, and I just didn't like it when I saw it in the theater, because my expectations were so high. And then when I finally got the laser disc, and I saw it in widescreening, and I was like, no, I did not. For some reason, the pan and scan, I thought, made it better. I don't know why. Though, there is a director's cut out there that they got in Japan. In Japan, they got, like, the uncut version of the movie. And I found a copy of that online that I downloaded. And it's a much better movie. They explain things a little bit better. Things make sense. The characters are a little bit more fleshed out. It's still not a great movie for me, but it is a better version of the movie. But just something about it just rubs me the wrong way. I just find it was dirt cheap. It was like, I remember there's a documentary about this I watched, and they were saying that the movie had originally like a super high budget, and then as the movie came closer and closer to being made, the budget just kept on dropping and dropping and dropping, which is why there's all these wide open empty spaces with nothing in them except maybe like a pile of mannequin parts. And it's just like, it was because they were supposed to fill this thing out with all this money that they had, and they didn't have any money to do it, so they just threw some random thing in the middle of the room. And it just feels cheap. I wish they did not cast Henry Rollins. As much as I love Henry Rollins, I wish they didn't cast him in it. I wish Ice-T wasn't in it. It was just like stunt casting to me, and it just ruined the movie. And Keanu Reeves looks like he's asleep at the wheel. It's just, ugh. I just can't get into it now. But I bought it because I like cyberpunk, so I wanted to have it. So I talked about one of these on the Super Enabler Brothers podcast that just released on Tuesday. Go over to Corpse Flood Gaming's channel to watch that. And they criticized me for not having this in my collection already. So, talking about an awesome series starring the guy that was just in that Johnny Mnemonic movie I was talking about. We're talking John Wick, people! We got the John Wick 1, John Wick Chapter 2, and the John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellums. So, I absolutely, I went and saw the first John Wick in the theater against my better judgment. I just thought it looked like Keanu Reeves sleepwalking through another role. Like, because a couple of the movies that he had made right before this were just like junk. I can't remember the one where it was him and the three girls. It was like a thriller, and I was just like, what is he doing? Is he trying to ruin his career? And I was kind of like, forget that. But I was bored. I had just broken up with my girlfriend, and I was like, I want to go see something that's going to take my mind off things. So I went and saw John Wick, and it blew my mind. I was like, I did not expect it to be like this. It's just this awesome martial arts, gun fu, action extravaganza, and I was just like, okay, that's exactly what I needed right now. And like, the moment it ended, I wanted part 2. It is so freaking awesome. So naturally, I talked a bunch of friends into watching it who didn't want to see this with me when I asked them if they wanted to come see me, or come see it with me, and they regretted not coming to see it with me because they ended up liking it. So naturally, when part 2 comes out, we all went out and saw it, and it was like, oh, ropey jetsam. And then, naturally, everybody wanted to go and see part 3 also. So I just recently got this. It showed up last week, I want to believe, because Captain Algebra sent me a message saying, like, hey, did you know that there's a buy 2, get 1 free sale at Target? And I was like, ooh, video games! So I went, and it turns out that the sale applied to not only video games, but 2 movies. So I bought 2 video games, got a free game, bought 2 movies, got a free movie, and I got this as one of my movies. Archer wants to be when he grows up. Yeah, I absolutely loved, like, the franchise just keeps getting better and better, I think, with each movie. I loved the fact that they introduced Halle Berry, especially those freaking dogs. Those dogs are awesome. I just love the world that they created. Like, the world building in this movie is absolutely fantastic and, like, top notch. And of course, the fights get crazier and crazier, and it's just great. I cannot wait for part 4. Yeah, I also cannot wait for The Matrix 4. I'm just super curious as to what they're going to do with it. Because from what I understand, it's going to be unlike any of the other Matrix movies. Probably because everybody that's in that movie died in the other ones. So, what are they all, ghosts? I don't know. Ghosts in the machine. Maybe. As you can tell, I'm very tired right now, which is why I'm loopy. And we're running on another 2 hours. Shit. Anyway. An homage to nut trauma. Yep. No, was it head trauma? No, the head trauma was The Raid, part 2. Julie and Julia, don't judge me. I went to visit my parents, and they dragged me to see this movie. And I was just kind of like, do I have to? I was like, it's about cooking. And I was like, I like cooking. I like cooking just fine. I don't want to watch a movie about it. And I ended up falling in love with it. It's actually a very fun, quirky little, like, sort of comedy. It's really well made. I liked it a lot. And, like, Meryl Streep as Julia Child is fantastic, and Amy Adams is, like, cute as a button. And it's just really, really fun. I liked it a lot. Not really a whole lot going on in plot. It's basically Amy Adams she moves in to a new place with her boyfriend, and they find one of Julia Child's recipe books. And she decides to start a blog for every day she's going to make another recipe in the book. And she was going to blog each recipe that she does. And at the same time she's doing that, it kind of flashes back to Julia Child doing those recipes and what kind of bullshit she was dealing with, like in a male-oriented, like, the food service industry type of thing. The kind of bullshit she was dealing with back in, like, the 60s. And it's just really interesting. I thought it was really well made. It's based on a novel, based on a real person. The girl down here who did the blog thing, it's based on her blogs. I thought it was really cute. It was really charming. I did not expect to like it at all, and I ended up liking it a lot. It's just weird. I couldn't stand Chef. I don't know why. I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. Yeah, Chef just did not do it for me. Anyway, now we've got Robin Williams. So sad about Robin Williams passing on, but we got the Jumanji. I had not watched this. When I purchased this 4K version, I had not watched this movie in probably 20 years. And when I bought it, I put it on, and I was like, okay, don't suck, please, because I really liked this movie back then, and it's still fun. Robin Williams totally makes the movie. Kirsten Dunst is really cute in this. She's like, you could see why she became a huge star, because she can carry a movie on her own. She basically tries to steal the movie from Robin Williams a couple times. It's kind of cool. But yeah, the special effects definitely do not hold up at all. Just like a lot of 90s early CGI, especially like the rhinos and shit and the elephants. And those monkeys are terrible. The monkeys are awful. Holy shit. Oh, made me want to vomit. But it's a fun little movie. It's video gamey a little bit since it's based on a board game. So is this the sequel to Clue? Probably not. But then we also have Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. It's considered a sequel because at the beginning of the movie, you see the board game change itself into a video game console to change with the times, which I thought was kind of neat. But it's also like a soft reboot also, and has gotten a sequel of its own. But definitely a video game movie, because now Jumanji is not a board game. Jumanji is a video game. And I had to get this set from Korea, because this is one of those 4K and 3D Blu-ray sets that is only available over there. And the movie is really fun. I remember I wasn't really interested in seeing this when it first came out, but ended up having to stay late at work one day, and if I stay past a certain time, traffic going home is shit, and I will be in traffic for hours. So I was like, I'll just stay out in this area, I'll go see a movie or something to wait out the traffic, and this was the movie that I ended up seeing. And there was one point in here where Jack Black, who in the video game world is being inhabited by a young girl, looks at a wiener for the first time and says, "Oh my god, it's got a handle," and I almost choked on the drink I was drinking at that point. Like, it shot out my nose. I was laughing so hard. It is a very fun movie, very funny. The sequel is basically just a rebrand, or a remake, not a remake, a redoing of this. It's a copy. But it's just as fun, I think. Maybe not as good. But it's great. I love this one a lot. That one's better than the one that followed. I'm getting tired and I'm getting tongue-tied and shit. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's another one. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. Rehash. That's a good one. Here's another one that you're either going to love it or you hate it. I loved it. I was really excited when this was... It was supposed to come out, like, I think during the summer, whatever year it was. What year did it end up coming out? I think it was 2017. It was supposed to come out during the summer, and then they ended up converting it to 3D, and it ended up coming out in February the next year. And I ran out and saw it opening weekend because it's by the Wachowskis, and that's Jupiter Ascending. This is their big Flash Gordon. Jupiter Ascending is essentially a remake of Flash Gordon. And it is, because it is just as cheesy, it is just as silly. It's all about the set designs and the costumes and all that crazy stuff. It's goofy. It is beyond goofy. But I couldn't help but like it because I absolutely love Flash Gordon. And watching this, like, the moment I realized what it was trying to do, and it was trying to be like that serially, like, cheesy type of thing, I ended up just, like, grinning the whole movie. I was just like, this sucks. It's so stupid, but it's so awesome at the same time. Awesome special effects. The costumes and the sets and everything is just fantastic. The storyline's a little but, you know, it's the Wachowskis. They love doing crazy stuff. There is tons of awesome world building in here. Like, just the whole setup of the way, like, the economics work out in outer space is awesome. What the Earth is awesome. Like, when you find out why the Earth is there, is awesome. I absolutely loved it. Oh, they're all region free. I always make sure when I buy one of these that it's region free and it'll play in America, and all of them do. But yeah, it is a silly throwback to, like, serials from back in the day. It is just goofy and silly, and I absolutely loved it. And in 3D, it's even better, and it takes place in Chicago most of the time when it's not in outer space. The only problem I have with it is, well, it's not like a really problem. It's just I wish that the guy made a different choice. Is the villain is played by, what's his name, Eddie Redmayne, and for some reason he talks like this the whole movie until he gets mad. Then he's like, and it's what? It's like, dude, you have an Oscar. What are you doing? And I remember seeing an interview with him where they were talking. I think it was on the GQ YouTube channel where they, like, bring in an actor and they have them talk about all the roles in their past. And when he talked about that, he was just like, the character seems so crazy. I thought, why wouldn't he talk like that? He goes, but now I watch the movie and I cringe a little bit. So, which is kind of cool that he's actually, like, critical of that kind of thing. But, you know, it was a choice he made. He stuck with it. But it's a fun movie. I can't get enough of it. And my friend Jason, who lives here in Chicago, he's a DJ. Like, I think he saw it like 3 times. He worked on it. It actually filmed in Chicago. There was like a warehouse where they were filming all the green screen stuff in Chicago, and he worked on it. So he went and saw it in the theater when it came out, so he could see his name, you know, in the end credits. And he was like, it was bad, but it was still so good. So I had to see it again. And then when I said that I saw it again in the theater, he was just like, yeah. Second time I saw it, it was still bad, but it's still so good. So I saw it again. It was really fun. I mean, it's so much fun. It's just goofy. The original Jurassic Park, this is that re-release they did when they up-converted it into 3D. My girlfriend at the time and I went and saw this on the IMAX in 3D, and we were both blown away. I did not think... This is like one of the first times I had seen like an older movie post-converted into 3D. A movie that was not designed to be in 3D at all. And it works so freaking well. And it's not about things poking you in the face. Even though unintentionally there were a couple things like the raptors, when they come into the kitchen, they kind of go right at the camera. And that works. But like most of the time, it's just depth of field thing. You know, it just, you know, things are in the background. It makes the T-Rex actually look bigger than it is, which is kind of cool. That scene in the rearview mirror where you see the T-Rex's mouth, that scene worked so well in 3D. But you can't ruin this movie. Even if the 3D sucked, it's still Jurassic Park. It's still awesome. This is one of my favorite movies in 3D. Here's another one that you're either going to love it or you hate it. And I don't give a shit if you don't like it. I like it. I like it a lot. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the new version of this that is going to be coming out next year. You might know what I'm talking about, and it's Justice League. This is another one that I got from Korea. This is a Steelbook version that comes with the 4K Ultra HD movie and also the movie in 3D. Did not see the movie in 3D. I saw this with Charlie in the theater on the IMAX, actually, not in 3D. And I remember like watching the theater and going like, I thought this was going to be a complete shambles because of the whole Zack Snyder quit during post-production because his daughter committed suicide, which really sucks. and he had to leave the movie, but they still wanted to get it released, so they bring in Joss Whedon, and Joss Whedon's like, I want to make this movie like one of my movies, and not finish this movie for this guy who, like, you know, sunk all this time and effort into it. Yeah, I feel the same way, Charlie. I feel the same way about it. Like, I liked it, but it could have been a lot better, which is why I'm hoping the Snyder Cut that's coming out next year will be that. So basically, you have two clashing visions. You have Zack Snyder, who was trying to make the DC universe opposite of what the Marvel universe was, which was jokey and kind of silly and lighthearted, but yet serious. He wanted to make it like dark and grim, and that was what he was going for with Justice League. He was trying to keep it was supposed to have the same feel as Batman versus Superman. And then Joss Whedon comes in, and Joss Whedon's like, I like the funny. So let's reshoot all this stuff, and, what's his name? Henry Cavill can't shave his mustache off? We'll give him his really awkward-looking CGI lip that doesn't work at all. Sure, whatever. And it's just like the two things, like, at times just do not work. You can tell when it's a scene from the Zack Snyder version, and you can tell when, like, it intercuts between a Zack Snyder shot and a shot by Joss Whedon. And it just, at times, it just does not work. Which is why I'm really looking forward to seeing the Snyder Cut. Yeah, basically, yeah. So, I mean, I understand that Joss Whedon was brought in to finish the movie for the guy since he quit, but I wish they brought in somebody who had the same sensibility as Zack Snyder to finish the movie the way he intended instead of trying to make it his own movie, which is stupid. You know, if I want to watch Firefly, I'll go watch Firefly. I'll go watch Serenity. I will watch Serenity to death. I love that movie, but I do not want Serenity in with my DC superheroes. So that's my problem with it. But there are really cool ideas in here. I like the visuals. I like the action scenes are pretty cool. I like the fact that the one thing that Joss Whedon did that I liked is that he lightened up Superman's suit. I did not like the fact that it was like dark. I like the fact that it was brighter in this one, because when he's standing next to Batman, you can actually see that it doesn't look like he's wearing a black suit. He looks like he's wearing a blue and red suit. I mean, that's what I liked. Outside of that, Joss Whedon kind of needed I wish he stepped back and just tried to finish the movie for Zack Snyder instead of trying to make it his own. And then we've got all this stuff. So this is actually going to cover a lot of ground for me right here. So we've got the live-action Justice League movie. In the movie, the Justice League is Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. And from what I understand, in Snyder's version, the movie mostly focused on Cyborg. And then when Joss Whedon was brought in, he was just like, I like Superman and Batman more, so we're going to cut it and make it different. So we're probably going to see a hell of a lot more of Cyborg in the Snyder Cut when that comes out. Anyway, so we all know about the DC movies that come out on, that go direct to video, like the DC animated universe. So I was doing an episode of the Super Enabler Brothers podcast with my buddy Jason, and we were going to talk about the Snyder Cut being announced for 2021. And to segue into that, we started talking about all the DC animated movies that have come direct to video over the years and all that. And I thought I had a ton of them. I thought I had a lot. I thought I had at least 20. And then when I went through my collection and picked them all out so I could talk about them, I ended up having about 8. And I was like, wow, I totally deluded myself. I thought I had way more than that. So I went on a freaking personal mission to find as many of these as I possibly could. And then once the stores started opening again at the beginning of June, when I went to Half Price Books, luckily, the section that had all the animated movies was littered, and I mean absolutely littered with these DC animated movies, and I went freaking crazy. I had a coupon for 10% off everything I bought, so it helped. So I bought a ton of stuff, and a lot of them were these Justice League movies. So we've got Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. Well, I think the reason they left Green Lantern out of it, Cabot, was because they had made that Green Lantern movie a few years earlier and everyone hated it, so they kind of wanted to wait to put Green Lantern in it. I think they're going to try to reboot that movie before they put him in anything Justice League related until, Although, if you watch the Justice League movie, there's a scene where they show, like, all the heroes back in the day when they first fought Steppenwolf. You see there's Green Lanterns there, which I thought was kind of a nice touch. But yeah, I'm glad they left him out because I didn't want them to. Green Lantern is my favorite DC character, my DC superhero. That's my guy. So I was really pissed at the Green Lantern live action movie. So I was glad they didn't try to do it again and probably do it wrong again. I just want them to make a real good serious Green Lantern movie. That's all I want. That's all I ask for. That's all I want. Anyway, I haven't watched this one yet. This is one of the few that I haven't seen, but it's based on the Crisis on Infinite Earths comic book series. But because Infinite Earths in animated form probably would be a lot of money, they just decided to go with 2 Earths. So, whatever. And then we have, which is one of my favorite ones of these, Justice League Dark. There's an actual comic book of this out there, and I absolutely love it. I bought like maybe the first 3 or 4 issues of it, and I was like, yes! So, this is the version of Justice League that goes after the supernatural stuff, kind of like the way Doctor Strange is doing that in the Marvel Universe. This is DC's version of that. So the Justice League Dark is John Constantine, Etrigan, Deadman, Swamp Thing, and Zatanna. And for some reason they decided to throw Batman in here too because he's kind of dark and brooding, so why not? Yeah, he's just kind of there. The way they introduce his character to them actually kind of makes sense in this movie. But this was one of the first movies I saw before I realized that they were starting to do like a DC Extended Universe animated version of the MCU where all these animated movies tie together and we're going to come together in a big Infinity War type thing. And I was like, when I was watching this, I was like, why are they doing that? I mean, I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. This is one of the best ones they've made. But I was like, why are they doing it that certain way? And I was like, oh, I see. They're trying to tie things together. Because there was like references to things I didn't understand. And then I went back and watched one of the other ones that I had bought at the same time that's not a Justice League movie. And it references that. And I was like, oh, okay. And then if I had seen the follow-up, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, which is the final movie in that big lead-up thing that they were doing, all the different movies lead into this, there's a certain thing that happens in here that if I didn't see the movie that I was talking about referring to this, I wouldn't have understood a big plot point in this one if I hadn't seen that. With Teen Titans, what was it? Justice League versus Teen Titans? Yeah, Justice League versus Teen Titans was the one I was talking about. There's something they reference in here that takes place in Justice League Teen Titans, and there's something in Justice League Teen Titans that is a heavy they reference heavily in this. But anyway, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War is the Infinity War of this animated version of the universe thing, where it is super R-rated. I mean, this is R-rated. It is beyond R-rated. There's superheroes getting ripped in half, getting their heads split in half. I mean, it is absolute nuts. Like, limbs, guts, everything. People getting blown up. Characters you absolutely love from the DC universe getting murdered in horrible, horrible ways. It's fantastic. It's kind of awesome, even though it does borrow the outline of Infinity War. But this had to have been in production long before Infinity War because it takes forever for them to make these freaking animated movies. So I don't understand. I think it's kind of funny that they kind of mirror each other the way they do. It's absolutely fantastic. This is awesome. Like, the 2 Justice League Dark movies are great. They're absolute winners. Then you got Justice League Doom, which came out 2012 or 2011 or something. And I caught this one on Netflix. And the storyline of this is awesome because you find out that Batman has been collecting information on all the other members in the Justice League. Just in case one of them went bad, he would have a countermeasure on how to deal with them. And, what was it, Joker breaks in? I think it was Joker. Breaks into the Batcave and steals that information and starts taking out the members of the Justice League with Batman's plan. It's great. It's awesome. It's fantastic. I showed this to my girlfriend at the time, and she was just like, that was one of the better ones. That one's another winner. And then we have the movie that I understand starts off the whole DC animated extended universe series, and that is the Flashpoint Paradox. This is based off a story about the Flash. I have a graphic novel that's the first chunk of it, but it affected the entire DC Comics universe, where the Flash decides one day, I'm going to travel so fast, I'm going to run so fast, I'm going to go back in time and save my mother from being murdered. And when he does, it ruins the world when he comes back to the present, because in the present, he never got his powers. Aquaman is a villain. Wonder Woman is a villain. People who are villains that we think are villains are actually heroes and opposite and shit. It is nuts. And he has to go back and fix it. But first he has to find a way to get his powers back because he doesn't have powers when he comes back to the present. It is awesome. It is fantastic. They did simplify it a lot. Oh yeah, in this reality, Bruce Wayne was the person who died in the alley instead of his parents. So his dad is Batman, and he's doing it to avenge his son's death. It's really awesome. I like this one a lot. And then we have one of the earlier ones it is Justice League New Frontier. This is done like a 1930s or 40s type of thing. I haven't watched it in a while. I can't really remember a lot about it, but I remember I showed this to my brother and his girlfriend at the time, and they loved it too. I need to watch this again. Like, it's been a while. Like, I haven't watched this probably since 2007. Yeah, Martha Wayne became the Joker. Yeah. Excuse me. And then this one I haven't watched yet. I just got this like a week or two ago when I went to the Exchange. I looked at their section for these movies, and they had a bunch more that are part of this film universe that I needed to complete the set. And that's Justice League Throne of Atlantis. This one's obviously focusing more on Aquaman than anything. I'm assuming this came out right around the same time as the Aquaman movie, so I need to watch that one. And then we have Justice League versus Teen Titans, and you think that it's going to be about, like, seriously, like, the Justice League going up against the Teen Titans. They fight for maybe 2 minutes. And it's a really stupid misunderstanding that they fight over. Basically, this is more of a setup for Batman's son, and, Batman has a kid. That's a thing. He's Robin now. It's setting up his character a little bit more for what's going to happen in Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, and it also sets up Raven, like her whole situation, which is a big part of Apocalypse War, which is the thing that they reference a lot in that happens in this movie. So I'm glad. I mean, I didn't think this was one of the better ones. I thought this one was kind of meh. But I'm glad that I watched it, because if I didn't watch this, I wouldn't have understood a major plot point in Apocalypse War. And this is another one that I picked up I haven't watched yet, but it's Justice League versus the Fatal Five. I really don't know much about this one, but it was like $5 at Half Price Books, so I bought it. Here's a classic that I picked up not too long ago because Shout Factory decided to release this, and that's the Kentucky Fried Movie. So in the first stream where I was talking about DVDs, I was talking about Amazon Women on the Moon, which was a anthology comedy movie. It was all a whole bunch of just little disconnected stories that are all funny. It's actually because someone is watching TV and switching channels, and you're seeing all these different things on TV. This is the movie that the same people made before that. This took place, I think this came out in the 70s? 1977. The people who ended up making Airplane made this before Airplane. And this is the exact same thing. It's just like an anthology comedy movie. And it's just a bunch of stuff that makes fun of other movies. There's a whole big... I think the biggest thing in this is the parody of Enter the Dragon, which is awesome. Yep, the Zucker brothers. Yep, and Abrams. What's his name? Jim Abrams. Oh, but the thing is, they wrote this. They came up with it. It's based on a thing they used to do. It was the Kentucky Fried Theater was a theater that the Zuckers and Abrams had, where they would do sketch comedy on stage for people. And then this is like the movie version. But John Landis actually directed this. They produced it. They wrote all the sketches. John Landis directed it. They directed. I do believe they directed. No, I think John Landis also did Amazon Women on the Moon. That's the thing. Anyway. But yeah, this is crazy. It's awesome. I need to watch it again. But yeah, sketch comedy. The big thing is the Enter the Dragon parody that they have in here. And there's a lot of commercial type stuff. I want to say the one thing I remember the most from this and that I quote the most is Teenage High School Girls in Trouble, which is like trying to be an exploitation movie, kind of like a porno. And they actually brought in Marilyn Burns. I think her name was Marilyn Burns, or the girl who did all the Debbie Does Dallas movies. She's in the thing. And, like, all the things that would happen in a porno movie are taken completely out of context. Like, she walks up to a random guy in the street and goes, "Show me your nuts." And he starts going, blah, 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 like he's crazy. It's silly. And a lot of really fun wordplay, the kind of stuff that you see in Airplane. It's a great, funny little movie. I like it a lot. And then we have the 2 Kick-Ass movies. Kick-Ass 1 is definitely better than Kick-Ass 2. What was it? The first ever C2E2 in Chicago, the big comic convention that we have here now. The first one we ever had. They made a big deal about it. They started bringing comic book movies, like sneak previews of comic book movies, like the week before the convention happened, and one of them was Kick-Ass, and I won tickets to go and see the sneak preview of this, like a week or two before it opened. And the thing is, Aaron Johnson, who plays Kick-Ass, and Chloe Moretz, who plays Hit Girl, were actually there and did a Q&A when the movie was over. And they seemed really, really cool. I absolutely love the first one. It's like a more violent, realistic take on a superhero movie. Although it is amped up on the violence and the cursing, which is the only thing that was kind of like, really? Do we need to have hit girls saying the C word all the time? Enter the Fist, yep. But I absolutely loved it. It's fantastic. It's really well made. A lot of the music from this was stolen from other movies. Like, there's music from 28 Days Later in here, which makes no sense. But, what's it called? The one thing that I remember from the screening was when they were doing the Q&A, some guy in his mid-30s asked Chloe Grace Moretz if she was seeing anybody. And everyone in the place, like, including myself and the friend that I was with, like, we all, like, groaned. We're like, what are you doing? I think he was trying to be cute. And she basically, like, looked at him and she goes, you look a lot older than I am. She goes, you might want to talk to my brother before he kicks your ass. I was like, yeah. But the first one is awesome. The second one, it's loosely based on the comic book because there's like three, like Kick-Ass is like a graphic novel, and there's like 3 graphic novels, and there's a third one. The third one's all about Hit Girl being in prison, because at the end of the second graphic novel, she ends up going to prison. In the movie, she ends up dodging the prison thing, which I thought was kind of stupid. But yeah, this one just feels like more of the same. Let's just try to be more violent. Let's try to be more crass and stuff. Yeah, the whole motherfucker thing is kind of funny and all that, but yeah. Jim Carrey seems a little... I mean, he's funny, but he's a little out of place. And he actually lambasted this movie when he actually saw the cut that was being released, and he thought it was, like, really inappropriate. I'm like, then why did you agree to be in the movie, dude? Oh, yeah, rent was due. I mean, it's okay, but it's not nearly as good as Kick-Ass 1 as far as I'm concerned. Last stack, guys. It's a short little stack. We're almost there. We have the 2 Kill Bill movies, which I absolutely loved back in the day, but I watch it now, and I was just like, Quentin Tarantino, you need to rein it in a little bit because you're going a little bit overboard. So the way this worked was this was supposed to be one big, long movie that was going to be like 4 hours long with an intermission in the middle. And the Weinsteins were like, no, we want money. Everyone will pay to see our movies. Let's split it into 2. And he did. And by doing so, both movies feel really disjointed. Like, I wish that they still were planning on releasing, I think they were planning on calling it The Whole Bloody Affair, where they edited both movies together. Because the first movie, because of the way the story was written, just turns out to be nothing but action. It's nothing but action scenes, like kung fu fights and everything. That big sword fight at the end, which is like 20 minutes long. The movie was supposed to be like that originally. It was supposed to be all the action is out of the way at the beginning, and then you get all the story in the second movie. Because there's maybe 1 or 2 really short fights in the second movie. It's mostly all the dialogue. So the thing is, you watch the first movie and you expect the second movie to be the same thing, where it's just like all fights, barely any plot, and then you watch the second movie and there's barely any fights and it's all plot, and it makes perfect sense if these 2 were put together the way they were, because the way it was structured. So when I watch it now, I'm just like, wow, this is really awkward. Like, yeah, the fights are cool and all that, but Jesus Christ, man. He also needs to start taming down like his excess, I think. Because there's a lot of stuff in here he could have just left out and it wouldn't matter much. But for the most part, I think they're good. They're not as great as I remember them being back in the day. Here's a funny one. Captain Algebra picked this as his movie that he wished had a video game adaptation back in the day, and I thought it was a funny choice because no one's seen this freaking movie. We're talking Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I used to watch this movie all the time back in the day. My dad rented it because this was a horror movie that was PG-13, so therefore I could watch it. I wouldn't really call it a horror movie. It's just kind of like a weird comedy with a couple of horror elements in it. I wouldn't really say it's a horror movie. But the makeup effects are top-notch. The Chiodo brothers, who did all the effects for this, and they did the Critters in the Critters movies, the makeup effects for all the clowns and stuff, the alien clowns, is really, really good. They're really animated really well. The gag kills, the clown kill things that they do are really funny too and clever. It's a silly idea. I mean, come on, it's about clowns from outer space that arrive in a giant circus tent. But when you look past all that, you will see that it's kind of very cleverly made movie, and it's very funny, and it was made to be tongue-in-cheek, and I really do enjoy it now. And there's a reason why Captain Algebra picked this for his movie he wished had a video game adaptation, because it's a lot of fun. It would make for a very fun video game. And the thing that gets me is, when it comes to, like, you know, Scream Factory, they do put a lot of extras on their releases, right? But when it comes to Arrow Video, look at this. This whole paragraph thing here is all the extras that are on here. Holy shit. There's got to be at least 30 extra stuff on here. 30 extras on here. Or 30 extras. I can't talk. It's crazy the amount of stuff that they put on here. That is absolutely nuts. Absolutely. There's even like auditions for people to be the clowns on here. They do put a lot into their releases. I will... When I get to the S's, you're going to see an Arrow release that I was like, what? Why are there alternate cuts of this movie? What? You're going to be surprised when we get there. Found this at Half Price Books at the beginning of June, and I was like, I did not even realize this came out on Blu-ray, but I have seen it before, and it's not great, but I am trying to get all the movies in this franchise, and it is King Kong versus Godzilla. In America, this is called King Kong versus Godzilla. In Japan, it's called Godzilla versus King Kong. In Japan, Godzilla wins. In America, King Kong wins. But it's really silly. I don't even know if it was supposed to be. I don't even know if it was supposed to be King Kong, and they just ended up calling it King Kong. I don't know. Maybe it was in the public domain at the time. Whatever. But it's not a very good Godzilla movie. It's entertaining. My friend Justin thinks this is like the greatest thing ever, and he was the one who showed it to me. And I was just like, it's all right. But it is a Godzilla movie, so you know what to expect. It just has King Kong in it. Here's a franchise. I know Charlie loves these. We got the Kingsman films. I got both of these on 4K. The first one, The Secret Service, and the second one, The Golden Circle. These are based on comic books. I've never actually heard of the Kingsman comics back in the day. I think the comic book itself is just called The Secret Service. And they renamed it Kingsman because, whatever. But it's fun comic booky movie. There's like James, if you were to take James Bond and make it into a comic book film. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. That whole scene in the church where the signal makes everybody go crazy and there's that huge murder orgy going on is like one of the coolest things. I love the ending. I love the first one. The second one is good too. It's kind of funny because the Mandalorian is in it and he has a laser lasso and it's kind of awesome. The villain in the second one is, what's her face? Julianne Moore. And she like is trying to be a villainous version of not Paula Deen, the woman who had the cooking show that went to jail. The older woman. I can never remember her name either. And it's kind of funny to watch her do that. But they're just silly, comic booky, James Bond comic book movies. I think they're really fun, really funny. I love that Sofia Boutella had those metal razor legs from the first movie. I thought that was really awesome. And Sam Jackson cracks me up with the way he lisps and he thinks everyone else sounds kind of funny. I loved it. The way they bring back Colin Firth's character in the second movie is kind of funny, and it's one of those times where I realized that I listened to way too many film scores because the same guy who scored these movies also scored X-Men First Class, and they reused a piece of music from X-Men First Class when Colin Firth's character regains his memory. And I was like, why are they doing that? It's like, what? Did they just ask him to reuse the same music? But I love them. I think they're really fun. I do need to watch Golden Circle once more. I've only seen it the one time in the theater. Martha Stewart. Yeah, she's trying to play like a psychotic Martha Stewart, where she's just always acting all cute and like, oh, it's the best, isn't it? You know, it's really good. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is Shane Black's, I think, directorial debut. He ended up going on to direct Iron Man 3 and that shitty ass Predator movie the Predator. This is the movie that convinced the suits that Robert Downey Jr. could be Iron Man. This was his big return to form movie. It's him and Val Kilmer playing detectives, and they play off each other so well, and it's really funny. The mystery itself is okay. But it's mostly the interplay between Val Kilmer and Robert. I always called him Morton Downey Jr. Jesus, Robert Downey Jr. The interplay between them, the dialogue, is like the highlight of the movie, and it's what makes me love it. I love the scenes where they're just talking each other and ragging on each other and just talking shit. It is so much fun, and I didn't see this until after Iron Man came out. My brother was like, "Well, if you like that, watch Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. You'll see why Robert Downey Jr. got that part because this is the movie that convinced the suits that he could do it." And yeah, I was like, you know what? He's got his shit together. He is awesome. I'm all for it. So that's another one that I highly recommend. Kiss of the Dragon, one of Jet Li's American Kung Fu movies. I think this is probably the best one that he did as far as I'm concerned. Went and saw it with a couple friends. And it's just a simple story. Jet Li's uncle, who has like a shrimp chip shop or whatever, ends up getting killed, and he goes to kill everybody that kills him, type of thing. Except in this one, he uses those acupuncture needles to stop people. He like can throw them at people. He knows where your certain spots are that can like paralyze you or make you just like drop dead and shit like that. Kiss of the Dragon is a specific place you hit somebody and you can kill them instantly with an acupuncture needle. It's fun. Bridget Fonda seems a little out of place in it, but this one I think is the best out of all of his American movies that he made. I used to have a poster of that on my wall in my bedroom back when I was still living with my parents. Here's another one that a lot of people were like when it came out, but now it's like a cult hit, and that's A Knight's Tale, the movie that put Heath Ledger on the map. Like, he was like a star after this. Shrimp chips are pretty good, I will admit. Yeah, it's trying to be a movie about, like, jousting and, all that King Arthur type stuff. But it's using modern day music. And I remember when I saw it in the theater, that's the reason why people hated it, was because it was like trying to be like this movie about like King Arthur age type things with like jousting competitions and knights and all that kind of shit. But at the beginning, when they show like a jousting competition happening, people are singing "We Will Rock You" by Queen. And there's a scene that takes place at like a ball, and they're playing Golden Years by David Bowie. And it was just, to me, it was different in a creative use of music, and I thought it worked. And I can understand why a lot of people didn't like that, because they expect one thing and they're getting something else. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a really clever, fun movie. I love the way it was edited. And like Heath Ledger, it was like a star-making movie for him. Shannon Sossamon is not the greatest actress in the world, I will admit, but it also introduced me to Alan Tudyk, who ended up being in Firefly, and it was awesome. It's just a really fun movie, and I thought the music, the addition of that modern-day music, or sort of modern-day music, just was a nice touch. It made it that much different from everything like it out there. And also, it was a comedy, which I didn't expect. I thought it was going to be serious, and it's not. It's actually kind of a comedy. Speaking of comedies, I actually hosted a screening of this in Chicago. So, I used to do a show with my friend Josh on YouTube. It was called Toasty. It was like a talk show where me and my friend Josh would talk about geeky stuff while sitting on my couch. And in order to get the word out about the show in Chicago, we found this company called Tugg, T-U-G-G. And what you do is they own the rights to, or they get the rights to a lot of different movies. And you can host the movies at a movie theater if you can convince the movie theater to show that movie. And you can share in part of the profits, too. The Tugg will get a chunk of the movie. The theater will get a little bit of the money. Tugg will get a little bit of the money. Or Tugg will get a chunk of the money. The theater itself will get a little bit of the ticket sales. And then the people who are hosting it will also get a chunk of the money. And we decided to pick a movie that, we hadn't even released the first episode yet. We were trying to like build interest for it. So we were like, Toasty presents The Knights of Badassdom. I had seen the trailer for this. It was supposed to come out in theaters around the time of one of the San Diego Comic-Cons. The trailer showed there at the Comic-Con, and the movie just never really came out. It was being delayed over and over and over again, and I was getting more and more pissed. And then when I found out that we could actually get a screening of this in Chicago through that Tugg thing, I was like, look, we're going to kill two birds with one stone. Number one, we'll use Toasty and host this as Toasty to get the word out about the show. And number two, I can actually watch the goddamn movie. So what it is, it's about a bunch of LARPers who end up going up against a real demon. Who's in this? Ryan Quanten from True Blood is in it. Steve Zahn, Summer Glau, Peter Dinklage is awesome in this. Peter Dinklage is like this warrior guy. And, what's his name? Steve Zahn does like what he thinks is a fake magical ritual. And it actually summons a real demon that starts killing the people on the field. And it turns into like a real life or death type of thing among the LARPers. And it is really, really funny and clever. And I've seen LARPing. I've heard stories of LARPing. And it was really, really funny. And Summer Glau is awesome. She's also beautiful. I've met her in person. She's awesome. I like her. And Peter Dinklage is great also. You can see he's just having a ton of fun. So I wanted to see the movie so bad. Me and my friend Josh were like, let's host this movie in Chicago. And so I didn't think anyone would want to see it. So we ended up getting a theater by... What college is that? University of Chicago or something like that, I think it was. It's on Roosevelt. They put it in the smallest... They originally, the theater planned to put our screening in the smallest theater that they had. and then that sold out. So they were like, hey, all the tickets are sold out. There's still people calling, asking for tickets, or going to the website looking for tickets. We're going to put it in like one of our mid-sized theaters. And I said, okay, sure. So they upgraded us, and more tickets went up for sale. That sold out. And then they were like, we're going to put you in the biggest theater we have. And that almost sold out. So I want to say we also ended up having like a costume contest. And I want to say like 5 or 6 people showed up in costume, including a couple of my friends. A bunch of people just showed up in like Ren Fair costumes and stuff, which I thought was kind of disappointing. Because a couple of my friends that showed up in some really creative costumes. Like one of them was dressed like Michael Myers, but he had like a ghost Homer Simpson mask on, which was kind of funny. Another one of my friends showed up as Jason Voorhees from the NES video game with like the glow-in-the-dark mask and all that shit. But everyone was just kind of like, yeah, the guy in the generic Ren Fair costume, yeah, he should win. So we ended up giving him a Mario Brothers board game and I think a copy of a movie that we had bought. I can't remember exactly what movie it was. But turns out one of the producers of the movie came to see it. And he talked to us afterwards, and he was like, I'm so happy that you guys showed this movie. We never thought it would ever get a movie theater release anywhere. He goes, this is the first time it's actually shown in a theater that wasn't at a convention. He's like I'm so glad. And he like shook our hands and took a picture with us. It was really, really cool. And yeah, the movie ended up being really fun. I liked it a lot. It's silly and it's goofy, but it is also like a loving homage to like LARPing. So if you're into that kind of thing, or you like D&D and stuff like that, this is the movie for you. It's really good. I highly recommend it. This one's pretty new. I saw this New Year's Day, 2020, before the movie theater shut down. I made a day of going to the movies on New Year's Day. I saw 4 movies in the movie theater that day. I just hopped from theater to theater. I didn't skip the paying. I paid for every one of them. But I spent the entire day. And the first movie I saw that day was Knives Out. This is by Rian Johnson, the guy who made The Last Jedi, the Star Wars movie everybody hates, but I absolutely love. Don't judge me. Shut up. We're not going to debate it here. This is his follow-up, and it's like an old Agatha Christie novel, but funny. And what if the guy who is the detective, like the Hercule Poirot character, is actually kind of a dumbass and accidentally stumbles upon all the stuff he needs in order to solve the case? It's really funny. It's really clever. It does pull the rug out from under you, kind of the way all of Rian Johnson's movies do, which is why I like him. That's why I love The Last Jedi, because he basically started to lay out your typical Star Wars movie and then pulled out that rug from under you, and you're like, oh, I don't know where I'm going now. This is unpredictable. I don't like this. I love that. I don't want to see movies I've already seen. I want to see new things, which is why I love Last Jedi. Anyway, Knives Out was like that. It's like the same thing, but with an Agatha Christie storyline, and it's awesome. Especially Chris Evans playing a son of a bitch in this movie, and you can tell he's having a blast not playing Captain America. It is so much fun. Everyone in the movie looks like they're having a blast, especially Jamie Lee Curtis. She's like, I'm not playing Laurie Strode. Yes! But everybody looks like they're having a good time, and that's one of the reasons why I like the movie. It's just really contagious. It's just really, really fun. Here's a really cool one. The reboot, Kong Skull Island. This is another one that I had to get from Korea, I do believe. Yeah. Because this is an Ultra HD 4K and a 3D version of the movie. Saw this in the theater opening night with a couple of friends, and I really didn't, honestly, I didn't think I would like it. I was just like, oh, look, they're doing this just so they can make, like the same people who made the second remake of Godzilla, the one that came out in 2014, they made this as the second movie in the franchise because the whole intention was to eventually get to the point where they can have an American Godzilla versus King Kong movie. And this was to introduce Kong. They've already introduced Godzilla. And then at the end of this movie, they introduce all the monsters that were going to be in Destroy All Monsters, or the King of the Monsters movie. They're like, oh, we know you found Kong. We've already seen Godzilla, but we found all these cave drawings about all these creatures. And you see Rodan, you see Ghidorah, you see Mothra on the cave drawings. And I remember when they showed that, that's like a post-credit scene. I was like, ah! But it's a fun Godzilla movie. It's actually like a big-ass action movie with King Kong in it. And the effects for King Kong are pretty awesome. The characters are likable. Brie Larson did this before she did Captain Marvel, and I was like, if this was the movie they used to base her, like to make the movie that convinced them that she would make a great Captain Marvel, they picked the wrong movie, because she's just kind of like like a sidekick in here. She's just kind of like, hey guys, I have a camera. Yay. But Tom Hiddleston plays the lead in it, and he's really good as a leading man. I'm surprised he doesn't get more leading man roles. He just keeps on playing Loki over and over again. And Sam Jackson obviously goes off the rails like he does in every other movie he's in. It's a lot of fun. It's just a really cool monster movie. It's more of an action movie than a monster movie. And then we've got The Crawl. Bam. This is one of my favorite films. I saw this, like I said earlier, on a double bill with Jaws 3D at the drive-in. Jaws 3D scared the shit out of me. And then Krull wowed the shit out of me. He does a really good Loki, I will admit. I just wish he got more leading roles because I think he's a really decent actor. He's really good. You know, originally he was trying to audition for Thor. I do not see that happening. I'm glad they picked him to be Loki. He's the perfect Loki. Anyway, Krull is a weird mishmash of genres. It's science fiction, it's fantasy, it's adventure, it's strange. You've got creatures from outer space invading a fantasy world, and then the two like clash. But it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of really cool world building stuff. The world of Krull itself is just really cool. The rules that they set up are really neat. The whole glaive thing is amazing, even though a guy sticks his hand in a lava flow to get it and doesn't lose his hand or just set on fire in general for being near lava. Whatever. But like, I love the characters. Colwyn's a really cool character. Ynir. I love the whole Widow of the Web scene. The Beast is a really cool villain. I wish they left Lissa's original voice in. The actress that plays Lissa is British, and the people that ran Columbia at the time were like, I don't think people are going to buy a British woman, in a fantasy movie. And they're like, half the cast is British. They're using their British accents. What's the problem with this girl? So they redubbed her with Lindsay Krause, who has this really deep mannish voice and makes no sense. Yeah. It's over. The whole stream's over. We've gotten the Krull, everybody. But I think the thing I like the most about it, other than the fact that the special effects are fantastic, the set designs, the costumes, everything is great. The music by James Horner is what blows my mind in this movie. It still is one of my favorite film scores. The Fire Mares theme, when they ride the Fire Mares to the Black Fortress, is one of my favorite pieces of music of all time. Like, I could listen to that any moment of any day, and I'm just like, yes, I'm good. It's James Horner was a fantastic composer, and then like in the early to mid 90s he started repeating himself and it started to piss me off. But whatever. Early James Horner is best James Horner. Star Trek 2, this, Aliens. I mean, come on. Battle Beyond the Stars. But Krull is one of my favorite movies. I watch it all the time. I even have like a poster in my living room of it, which was like, it's the glaive. But on the inside of the glaive, you see Lissa and Colwyn and the Beast kind of standing behind him. It's one of my favorite movies. It's just really fun, creative. I love it. I would love to get a replica of the glaive also. Who redubbed Mel Gibson? Yeah, because Americans can't handle an Australian accent. I don't get Hollywood sometimes. I mean, I want to work in Hollywood so bad, but at the same time, I really don't because they're a bunch of idiots. Anyway, moving on. Next we have Kubo and the Two Strings. This is one of those Leica stop-motion animation movies. They did Coraline. Oh, what was the one about the kid who can see monsters? That one was pretty decent too. But this is my favorite of the ones that they have made. Let me see something real quick though. Oh, they don't have their names on it? Shit. This one is like all about Japanese traditions and stuff, and it's more adult than, I mean, most of their movies are Paranorman. That's the one that they did. I think that they also did James and the Giant Peach back in the day. Like, people that worked on that ended up creating Leica. There are also people that worked on Nightmare Before Christmas. But Kubo and the Two Strings it's an adult movie in the guise of a kid's movie. I went and saw it on my birthday because I was just kind of like, I'll start with something lighthearted and I'll work my way as okay, I should explain first. Every year on my birthday, I spend the entire day at the movie theater. So this is the first movie I saw on my birthday, whatever year it was it came out. I was like, I'll start with something light and I'll work my way toward the more adult things. I started off with one of the most adult things I saw that day. So like, Kubo is this little kid whose grandfather ripped his eye out when he was a baby, and his grandfather is like a a demon in shit, or he's like the god of the moon or something. I don't really remember. But the kid has his mother's catatonic because the thing with her father kind of like broke her heart or whatever. Kubo has this ability where he has like this one of these guitars which only has 2 strings, which is where the name came from, and he can control like origami characters that he makes, and he does that for money in the town square, and that he can buy food, brings it up to his mother because he live in a cave. And then once he's never allowed to stay out past dark, because once he's out past dark, his uncle, or no, his grandfather and her sisters, his mother's sisters, his aunts, will find him because they want to get his other eye. And it's like really adult, and it's kind of sad at times, and it's just, I think it's one of the best movies that Leica made. Like, I could watch this any day. It's really hard to explain though, because it's kind of weird and strange, because all of a sudden this monkey randomly shows up that's voiced by Charlize Theron, and then Matthew McConaughey shows up as this big armored beetle guy, and like, what does this have to do with anything? And then when you see the ending of the movie, which I'll not ruin if you haven't seen it, it's like, oh, it's so good. It is so good. And then we have like the opposite of that. We have Kung Fu Hustle. This is one of Stephen Chow's movies, and he makes like parodies of Hong Kong movies, even though he makes his movies in Hong Kong. The first movie he did was Shaolin Soccer, which was like making fun of Kung Fu movies by adding soccer into it. So it's a Kung Fu soccer movie. And this one is like if you were to take a Looney Tunes cartoon and insert Kung Fu into it. There's a scene where Stephen Chow jumps so high into the air and needs to continue to ascend that he gets so high, he uses a hawk that's flying by as a launch pad to jump even higher. And when he touches it with his foot, you hear the hawk go, "Baka!" It's like a living cartoon. Like, people run, like in The Mask. One woman runs and her legs turn into like the little, like, fast-moving spinning wheel things, like in The Mask. It's absolute craziness. I love it. It's goofy and funny and silly. But it's also like really awesome at the same time, because some of the action scenes in it are absolutely fantastically choreographed and creative. The scene with the guys that use the guitar, or that sitar thing that they're shooting the musical notes at the characters, that was done by Sammo Hung, the guy who works with Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan's like older brother. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. That guy's called the Beast. Yeah, I know, right? 2 movies in the K's with a character named Beast. And the last movie I'm going to talk about today is Kung Fu Panda. I had a person that I worked with who kept on calling me Po. Because she says the way he talks is the exact same way you talk, Chris. You're Po. It's like, as long as you don't call me Po White Trash. I got the jokes. Anyway, my brother's girlfriend at the time that this came out, I think I mentioned it before when I was talking about Burn After Reading. She got into a car accident when she was leaving Chicago to go join my brother in L.A. And like, she hadn't even left the city limits, and she got into this horrible car wreck and totaled her car. And while she was waiting for the insurance money to come back so she could buy a new car so she could go to L.A., she was staying with me. And she was super bummed, obviously. You know, she trashed her car. She could have gotten seriously hurt. Luckily, she didn't. She couldn't go see my brother. And, you know, she basically had to crash on my couch for 2 weeks, and she wasn't happy about that. So I kept on taking her to see movies to cheer her up. And the movie, the day that she got into the accident, the day that I was like, you know, you're going to come and stay with me while this is going on, I took her to see Kung Fu Panda at the Dollar Theater, and it cheered her up almost immediately. She was like, that was so cute. And it's a really fun Kung Fu movie, like a coming-of-age type of thing, you know, realizing hidden potential type of thing. It's really fun. And they made 2 other sequels of this, and the second one I liked. The third one I was just like, no. But, yeah. It's entertaining. I'm only going to probably own the first one, so there's that. But Jackie Chan's in it, and Seth Rogen. And the guy who played the Keymaster in the Matrix sequels. Yeah, I probably will rebuy this as the 3D version, if I can find it. But I think the second and the third one were in 3D also. But honestly, no, I think this came out after I was still living in the burbs. And Avatar came out when I was living in the city. So, yeah, I think this came out before 3D. Angelina Jolie. Yep. Angelina Jolie, Jack Black. Or, sorry, not Jack Black. Yeah, Jack Black. Jackie Chan. Jesus, I can't remember. I remember the guy who played the Keymaster. Lucy Liu. It's a fun movie. It's a fun series. The third one, I was like, I think that they had run out of ideas at that point. I was just like, whatever. The second one was pretty fun too. But anyway, that's it for tonight. And look, I almost went to 3 freaking hours again. James Hong is the dad, yes, and he is awesome. James Hong is one of my favorite actors ever. Everything I've seen him in, I like. Everything. Even if it's just his voice, I like it. I like it a lot. James Hong is awesome. I hope I can meet him before he dies. Because he's really old. But with the whole COVID thing, that's probably not going to happen. Anyway, thank you for sticking around. I know most of you have been here the whole time. Holy crap. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next time, I think I will just go with 2 letters. Because even when I thought I didn't have enough movies to cover 2 hours worth of talking, I almost went to 3 again. Shit. I'm glad I have tomorrow off. I'm going to need a throat recovery day. Holy crap. I will be back next Thursday with another one of these. We'll see what movies I decided to talk about. What letters I decided to go for. I'm probably just going to go for 2. God, every time I'm like, I don't think I have enough movies to talk about to fill out 2 hours. And holy shit, look at that crap. Anyway, thank you very much again for coming. Everybody stay safe out there. I hope to see you next time, next Thursday, 7 p.m. Central. And I'm actually, this weekend, since I am off, going to start working on that edited content. Captain Algebra will be so proud of me. So, hope to see you then. I'll talk to you later. Like I said, stay safe. Stay safe. Have a great holiday weekend. I will see you next time. Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, out!